Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto saves Whitebeard. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. The ruins of the once beautiful Uzushiyogakure no Sato basked under the light of the rising sun. The village was a place of wonder, beauty and pride to those who once upon a time lived there. The Uzumaki clan, a once strong and powerful clan, descendants of Otsutsuki Ashura, known for their incredibly strong life force, unique chakra and famed for their mastery of Fuinjutsu, had once called this place home. Their skill in Fuinjutsu had brought them fame and fear. It was this fear that led to their downfall. Struck down by enemies from all sides, they were wiped out. All but a few survived, fleeing their ancestral home to find a new one. Now the glorious village lay in nothing ruin. Deep within the ruins of the once illustrious Uzumaki clan compound was a single individual, a being of great power, one who had shied away from the world because of his failure. Here resided Uzumaki Naruto, a man from an age long past. He sat in the shadows, the darkness obscuring his form from view as he lamented on his many failures. Nearly 6,000 years ago, the era of the shinobi had come to an end by his hand. He had failed in his duty to release the Mugen Tsukuyomi in time, causing all his friends, allies, everyone he had fought with during the Fourth Shinobi World War to be turned into white Zetsu. His brother in all but blood, Uchiha Sasuke, had been struck down by Otsutsuki Kagaya, the progenitor of chakra. In his last moments, Sasuke had given Naruto the Rikudo no In no Chikara, completing the Rikudo no Yu no Chikara he had received from Otsutsuki Hagoromo, the Rikudo no Sennin. With the sun and moon mark, the yin and yang chakra of the sage, Naruto battled the mother of chakra for 7 days and 7 nights, finally weakening her enough to attempt to seal her away. He had ultimately decided to seal her away inside of himself, knowing if he sealed her back in the moon she would only attempt to escape once more. Naruto, however, miscalculated. In his haste to seal Kagaya away, it caused his own downfall and that of the entire shinobi nations. He had attempted to seal her and the Shinju into his own body. The influx of their powerful chakra and life forces clashed with his own. His body and theirs were torn apart, their chakra fused together, causing a catastrophic eruption that leveled the landscape, destroying half the continent. Chakra was scattered across the globe. Naruto's body transformed, becoming entirely made of chakra. He was no longer human, but a being of pure chakra. His body would gradually reform, taking 10 long years before he returned, forever change. He had shot up to 6 feet in height. His once cerulean blue eyes had transformed permanently, taking the shape of the Rinne Sharingan. His once bright blonde hair had turned pure white, white as snow, and flowed freely down his back. His spikes had become tamer. He had even grown a pair of 6-inch long horns protruding out from his forehead. He retained the In and U chakra marks, the sun mark on his right palm and the moon-like mark on his left palm. His chakra reserves had increased exponentially, due to the absorption of the Shinju and Kagaya, upon which he discovered many years later. His reserves were unimaginable, reaching such levels that when his clones attempted to pick up his chakra signature they failed. He later theorized that his chakra had skyrocketed into another dimension entirely, becoming so large that they were unable to be detected by anyone unless he voluntarily lowered them. When he had reformed, he had attempted to release the Mugen Tsukuyomi, only to discover he had been too late. The 10 years which it had taken for his body to reform had allowed enough time to elapse for the roots of what remained of the Shinju to drain his comrades of their chakra and transform them into white Zetsu. He had wept for his comrades and ultimately decided to vanquish the white Zetsu, absorbing their essence into himself, gaining the memories of his comrades, friends and former allies. He then proceeded to sink the remnants of the elemental nations, sending the continent deep into the ocean's depths, and left for what remained of Uzu no Kuni. Using the memories of Kagaya to manipulate Inton and Yoton nature chakras into Onmyoten to utilize the Banbutsu Suzu no Jutsu, splitting apart what remained of the Shinju's chakra in his system, adding his own in order to bring back the Biju with all their memories and powers to restore what remaining comrades he had. Naruto had been tempted many times to bring back his fallen comrades, but ultimately decided to allow them to rest in peace with their loved ones in the afterlife. The 9 comforted Naruto with the deaths of his comrades and helped him train with his new abilities for the last 6,000 years as he remained in solitary, unknowing that soon he would be brought back into the world to fight for peace and bring about a new world order. The child of prophecy would return, for his work was not yet complete. A dark order had swept across the globe, one that brought chaos and despair. Current time, 12 years before canon. The Kainden no Shima, the Forbidden Island, was a land said to possess untold wealth that would make any man rich beyond his wildest dreams. For 6,000 years the land had remained unplundered, many had tried and many had failed. The island was surrounded by deadly whirlpools that protected it from invaders. Only the brave have attempted to raid this land of its riches. Adventurers, pirates and marines alike had all attempted to claim this land as their own. All in order to plunder the riches of its deceased. Even the famous Whitebeard once tried to claim the land as his, only to be rebuked, not by the whirlpools that surrounded the island but by a legendary beast. Many have speculated about the existence of this legendary creature that swam beneath the ocean's depths, its shadow larger than any known sea king. Many had attempted to capture the beast only for them, their crew and ship to sink into the ocean's depths, their souls lost for all eternity to Davy Jones' locker. Now for the first time in thousands of years, someone had finally managed to cross the mighty whirlpools of the Forbidden Island, avoid the legendary beast and land on its soil. The man to land on the Forbidden Island was a pirate known to the world as Bluebeard, the captain of the Blue Whales pirates, a man with a 50 million berry bounty on his head. His armada consisted of 6 heavily armed ships, 2 featuring large prison cells beneath the decks to store his loot. Bluebeard was a pirate notorious for his investments in the slave trade. He and his crew explored the world, kidnapping rare individuals to sell off to the highest bidder. The Blue Whale pirates had heard of the Forbidden Island and the treasures it was supposed to contain. At the thought of treasure, they made a beeline for the strange island to see what wealth they could find. As a vicious pirate, he was not above pillaging the bodies of the dead to make his riches. Through sheer will, accompanied by pure stubbornness, with perhaps a little luck, he and his small scouting party had transversed the whirlpools of the island. They saw hair nor hide of the beast that was said to guard the island, before making land on the island's soil. The trek inland had taken a number of hours, but they had finally arrived at the ruins of the Forbidden City. Bluebeard inhaled deeply as he stepped forth, cloaked in thick black trousers down to his ankles, black combat boots with steel tips and spikes jutting out from the back. Bluebeard was an incredibly tall man, standing 9 feet in height with a large bulky build. He wore a tight white shirt with a thick black overcoat over the top. He had a golden belt around his waist with 8 flintlock pistols, 4 on each side strapped to it, a cutlass to the right of his hip. He had bushy dark blue hair with a long bushy blue beard, as such his name. His eyes were black and beady, lifeless and dull, like shark eyes. A sickening grin burst into place as he eyed the remains. He gave a deep bellowing laugh. Zeruhahahaha. His foul laughter and stench filled the air as he eyed the ruins of the fallen city. He turned to his men. "Tear this place apart," he commanded. A rain of cheers filled the air as his men stormed into the torn buildings, searching for whatever they could find. They tore down walls and old shops without a care as they searched for anything and everything they could get their hands on. Bluebeard made his way through the village, stopping at what appeared to be a small number of marked graves. He looked at the soil and smirked. "Shovel," demanded the pirate as one of his lower crew members approached. Bluebeard snatched the shovel from his subordinate's hand and started digging until he hit gold. He removed a wooden coffin from the hole sitting it on the ground and tore it open, revealing the fresh remains of a young man with bright red hair. It had looked like the man had died recently, but that was impossible as the island was said to be deserted and the headstone looked thousands of years old. The body had been perfectly preserved. Bluebeard searched the body, removing a number of items, small scrolls, a sword of all things, before he hid gold. He tore a necklace from the man's neck, a long silver chain with a swirl-like symbol made of pure gold with small sapphires ingrained into the metal. "Find more graves. We hit the jackpot," demanded Bluebeard as he turned his attention to his crew. The men cheered and grabbed their shovels and began to dig up the nearby graves, a mistake that would cost them dearly. The moment the shovels hit the soil, a powerful pressure like nothing they had ever felt before came crashing down upon them. Their eyes bulged as they collapsed to their knees. Fear filled their existence as they witnessed their own deaths as if they were visions of the future. Slowly stalking towards them from the shadows was a literal demon. Approaching them was a man with horns growing from his forehead, and eyes that bored deep into their very souls. Naruto had sensed their arrival on his home and had decided to ignore them, informing Gyuki and Isobue who lurked the waters to allow them through. The moment they decided to defile the graves of his kinsmen, they had sealed their fates. He stalked like a predator would stalk its prey as he made his approach, his killer intent descendant upon them like a landslide as the visage of the Shinigami appeared behind him. He stood before them dressed in a light-colored kimono with magatama adorned around the collar. The kimono was held closed by a dark-colored sash. Underneath, he wore a black full bodysuit. He was dressed in the exact same manner as his ancestor Asura. Naruto eyed the men before him, 15 in total, a small group. He held out his right hand. With his control over the 5 nature transformations and the yin-yang release, he brought forth 10 small fist-sized spheres, the Gududama. The strange black spheres floated behind him in a circular manner. One floated into his right hand where it took shape, changing its composition into that of a 2-meter-long shakuho. The staff had 2 heads. The one at the top was in the shape of a circle, a sun with 10 black chain links attached. The head at the end was shaped like a crescent moon with 2 interlocked ovals in the middle that constantly rotated around one another. Naruto slammed the shakujo's moon end into the ground, causing the entire island to shake as his chakra levels began to lower, allowing the sheer magnitude of his immense reserves to fall upon the intruders. He had theorized long ago that his chakra, when lowered to the level in which it could be detected, it would have adverse effects on all who felt it. His chakra carried its own presence. It would be as if gravity had significantly increased around him. "Tell me, how do you wish to die?" asked Naruto. His eyes began to glow as he glared down at the insolent fools who dared to desecrate his home. From where he stood, he could sense the powerful negative emotions that radiated from each and every one of the intruders. Not only that, he could sense it from the others out at sea. Even the negative emotions coming from all other world, and it sickened him. The world had become a dark place, where chaos was allowed to run free. Bluebeard sneered as he struggled to his feet against the pressure. "I don't know who you are, freak, but once we capture you, I'm sure you'll sell for a high price on the slave market," spat the foul pirate as he drew a flintlock, pointing it towards Naruto, and fired. A loud bang echoed as the round in the chamber sailed towards Naruto. The smell of gunpowder hung heavy the air. Naruto eyed the strange L-shaped weapon, wincing slightly at the loud noise it made. His eyes caught the flames that ejected from the barrel as a strange round projectile sailed towards him. His enhanced senses picked up the strange smell of saltpeter as the strange metal projectile headed in his direction. His shakuho blurred through the air, striking the incoming metal object, deflecting it into the ground, earning shocked expressions from the invaders. His ire grew as he blurred forward and appeared in front of the blue-bearded man. Naruto's left hand reached out to grasp the man by his face, lifting him up off the ground with surprising strength. "I grow tired of you." His Rinne Sharingan flared as he reached deep into the man's core to grab hold of his soul. Naruto began to pull, appearing to extract a clear-like specter from the man's body. He ripped it free from the confines of its human shell. He watched the putrid essence of the blue-bearded man squirm in his grip. Naruto's grip tightened as he began to absorb the specter into his own body in an attempt to gain the man's memories, learning everything the man knew about the current world. A dark scowl made its way to Naruto's lips as he learned of many unpleasant things. The one that most displeased him was that fact slavery was allowed to run rampant, and those who dared to assist the escaping of slaves were punished. That slaves who escaped their masters were hunted down and returned to them like dogs. If he was to remove Bluebeard and his crew, then he would be doing the world a favor. Naruto summoned his chakra, allowing it to flow forth like a raging river as he turned towards the remaining 14 scum who stood before him. Hate coursed through the immortal's veins as he reached deep into his core, tugging on his chakra network, allowing chakra to pour through every fiber of his body. Fire nature and earth nature chakra began to take shape within, swirling around one another before they were merged together, giving birth to the Uden. The temperature in the air grew rapidly, waves of heat gushed from Naruto's body. The soil beneath boiled as it began to melt. Naruto turned towards the men who dared to commit such vile sins as kidnapping, extortion, blackmail, rape, grave digging, murder and slavery. Yotan. Shakunetsu Kawa no Jutsu, lava release. Scorching river technique. Naruto inhaled deeply, chest swelling up as lava nature chakra was channeled into his lungs, lips parted and chakra was expelled. Fire and earth chakra mixed together, allowing a wave of intense heat to erupt out into the air with the force of an erupting volcano as liquid fire came to life. Molten lava rocketed forth, expanding in midair like a giant blanket. The lava struck the ground in front of Naruto and sped forward at high speed towards the intruders, who screamed, attempting to flee. Sadly, they could not outrun the inevitable. The lava came crashing down upon them like a tidal wave, consuming their mortal bodies, melting down flesh, muscle and bone until nothing was left. Naruto approached the desecrated corpse of his kinsman, picking the preserved body up and placed the young man back in his coffin, followed by the items that had been removed. Naruto made a small prayer for the man before using earth nature chakra to sink the coffin into the ground, reburying the deceased Uzumaki. Naruto inhaled before sighing as he turned in the direction the men had come from. It was time to deal with the rest. Naruto closed his eyes, reaching into the deeper plane of the Biju's mental world. Yuki, Isobu, let us go welcome our guests. Naruto could feel the pull of the two Biju as they answered the call. Naruto took a single step and vanished in a blur of white, only to appear at the edge of Uzu no Kuni. Naruto stared out across the ocean towards the 6 ships that stood in a perfect line. Inhaling again, hands came together in the ram seal and began molding chakra, reaching out to nature, pulling on the surrounding natural energy and bringing it into his body, infusing it with the yin-yang release. An orange pigment formed around Naruto's eyes as he invoked a temporary sage mode. Senpo. Onmyoten. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Sage Art. Yin-yang release. Shadow clone technique. All the stored natural energy was released from his body, transforming the shape of an identical clone. Unlike normal Kage Bunshin, who dispelled with a single hit, this clone possessed half of Naruto's own soul. This clone was unique in that it could generate its own chakra, and the only way to dispel it was if Naruto dispelled it himself. This new type of clone was powerful, but it had its drawback. Being made from part of his own soul, he could only make 3 as it required his own soul but split into fragments, while retaining at least a quarter. Each clone needed a minimum of a quarter to be made, but they had their uses. Naruto nodded to his clone and the two separated, moving across the water, running towards the ships. Naruto's eyes shifted, bleeding into lavender white as the veins around his eyes bulged, transforming into the Byakugan. With the all-seeing eye, he pierced through the ships, discovering the location of the slaves being held captive in the middle two. Isobu, deal with the 2 on the far left. Yuki, the 2 on the far right, commanded Naruto, getting a pulse of chakra from the 2 Biju as a response to his commands. Facing the clone, Naruto directed to clone to the middle ship on the right. He would take the one of the left. With Isobu swam beneath the ocean's depth. The massive shadow he bore appeared beneath the 2 ships he was to target. Slowly the Biju emerged from the water, his massive turtle-like body with crab shell coming into full view. 3 massive shrimp-like tails began to rise up into the air, looming over the 2 ships. The pirates could only watch in horror as the massive beast rose up above them, its form bigger than any sea king they had seen, towering a few hundred meters in height. Isobu eyed the men who had earned his friend's ire before the right end tail was brought down. The tail came crashing down on the ship with enough force it was split in 2. Men screamed as the ship's 2 halves began to sink into the depths of the sea. They jumped overboard thinking they would be safe, but that was when the nightmare began. Isobu roared. Chakra poured out from the Biju's body and into the surrounding ocean. The ocean began to stir. Waves rose up as a large whirlpool formed around the raging-tailed beast. The whirlpool spun with righteous fury, drawing the pirates into the water's depths, dragging them under before it imploded in on itself, tearing their bodies apart, taking them to Davy Jones' locker. The second ship turned to face Isobu, its cannons firing upon his shell. The large projectiles bounced off Isobu's bulky frame, harmlessly crashing against his durable shell, having no effect at all. The pirates continued to fire, but their weapons were ineffective. Without chakra they would never be able to hurt him. Isobu swam forward, his jaw open wide, bringing it down upon the ship, swallowing it whole. The moment they were swallowed, thousands of miniature clones were created inside of his body that would hunt down the pirates, attacking and devouring them without mercy. Once the ships had been destroyed, the Biju turned and left, heading towards the original Naruto. With the original Naruto ran across the surface of the ocean at full speed before leaping high into the air. landing onto the ship's wooden deck with a loud thud, catching the pirates by surprise. Naruto turned to face them, his Rinne Sharingan spiraling back to life, eyeing each and every one of the scum before him. Naruto's cheeks puffed out as water and fire nature chakra came together, flowing to his lungs where they came together to form a new element. The two chakras shot up from his lungs, becoming entwined within his esophagus where they became one. The new type of chakra surged up the immortal's throat. Futon. Kumu no Jutsu, boil release. Skilled mist technique. Naruto exhaled, unleashing a powerful acidic mist as he combined Suiten and Kaden chakra together to create Futon nature chakra. The acidic mist expanded out, falling down onto the pirates. Screams filled the air as those unlucky enough to be caught in the attack had their bodies eaten away by the corrosive mist. Their bodies began to melt like ice cream on a hot day. The pirates tore at their flesh as blood pooled beneath them. Skin melted, revealing muscle. Soon it melted, revealing the bone beneath. Their horrific screams filled the ship as Naruto looked down at the puddles of liquid that were their corpses with an uncaring expression. Nothing was left, not even bone, they were simply puddles of fleshy blood. Having been alone with only the Biju for contact, he had become a little more jaded. Naruto was no longer as naive or soft-hearted as he used to be. What he had seen from the pirate Bluebeard had made his blood boil with anger, and he felt no mercy for this trash, deciding to end their lives. The remaining pirates roared as they drew flintlocks, shotguns and rifles, aiming them towards the intruder. Naruto tilted his head to the right, an amused smirk forming on his lips as the projectiles came flying towards him from all angles. Raising a right hand, lightning and earth nature chakra flooded through Naruto's system and into the palm of his hand. He allowed the two chakra types to mix together, coming together to forge magnet nature chakra. With a single mental command, Naruto released a powerful magnetic force. The magnetic force struck the projectiles and repelled them, sending them back to their owners, cutting down more pirates with ease. The remaining few backed up, shaking with fear at the monster that stood before them. They had encountered devil fruit users before, but he was unlike anything they had ever seen. He was truly a monster, a demon in human flesh. Deciding to experiment, Naruto headed towards a pirate, not even bothering to take in his appearance. After all, the man would be dead soon. Naruto funneled his Doden and Raiden nature chakras, molding them together into the tip of his left finger. Reaching out, the sage tapped the middle of the man's chest. An overly sweet yet deadly smile formed on his lips, which made the man's eyes widen in fear. The pirate clutched his chest, screaming in pain as a giant explosion erupted forth, tearing his body apart. The pirate's mangled corpse was sent flying backwards in a fiery inferno, engulfing those behind him. Naruto looked at the bloody corpses with a cold, calculating look as blood and gore rained down around him. The Bakuden had been discovered accidentally when he had been messing around with his chakra natures a few years back. Sadly, he hadn't been able to properly test it until now. Naruto spun his shakuho as the remaining pirates quivered in fear under his gaze. Time to deal with the rest of them. Enten. Jigoku no Ikari, Blaze release. Hell's Rage. Manipulating the black flames of Amaterasu, a tidal wave of hellfire was sent raging forth onto the remaining pirates. The unholy flames engulfed everything in their path, allowing a pain like no other to fill these unlucky souls as they released blood-curdling screams. The smell of burning flesh filled Naruto's senses as the flames burned them down to a crisp before burning everything, even their ashes, leaving nothing behind. He turned his focus to the ship's deck and reached down with his left hand, touching the wood momentarily before pulling back, creating a claw-like shape with his fingers. A dark crimson chakra bubbled to the surface as Naruto's chakra mimicked a sharpened claw made of energy similar to that of a Biju's. The claw was brought down into the wood, fingers piercing through it. Gripping tightly, Naruto tore the deck open, ripping open a giant hole in the ship's deck, revealing the cages beneath. His vision narrowed at the sight of the dozens of young children in nothing but rags. Chains around their ankles bound to the floor. They appeared to be 10, with the oldest being no older than 15. Naruto jumped down into the hole, chakra receding as he eyed the metal bars. Lava nature flowered once more as Naruto reached out with his left hand in order to grab the bars. Steam hissed into the air as the bars began to melt under the intense heat of his intense chakra, allowing it to burn through the confines of the cage. He stepped through, eyeing the children, eyes softening as they backed away in fear. Naruto approached a young girl, 15 years of age, who stood in front of the younger children, a brave expression as she glared at him. The sage would crouch down in front of her 5-foot frame. She was a young girl blossoming into a beautiful young woman with long black hair and chocolate brown eyes in a white dress. The girl was thin from being malnourished and covered in grime and dirt. Take away the grime and dirt covering her face, add a few pounds to help her health, and one could consider her a world beauty who when older would shake the hearts of many men. Naruto reached out with his left hand. The girl shut her eyes tight, expecting pain to come. However, all she felt was Naruto gently rubbing the top of her head while revealing a small smile. "I won't hurt you. I'm here to save you." Naruto's voice was soft, kind and filled with warmth that drew the girl in. His hand was warm to the touch as he rubbed her right cheek. "I'm Naruto, what's your name?" Suzuka, spoke the young girl as she eyed the strange man before her, whose smile radiated with the brightness of 1,000 suns. Naruto focused his attention on the chain around her ankle and scowled. Grabbing the metal and focused lava nature chakra began to melt the metal, using a bubble of chakra to protect the girl's skin from the heat. Once the metal was melted, he moved on to the rest of the children, freeing them. From the memories of the pirate captain, these children were either orphans with no one who cared for them or whose parents sold them for minute riches. Naruto stepped out of the cell and slammed his hands on the ground using earth and water nature chakra with a little bit of yang release, giving birth to the Mokuton. Naruto manipulated the wood beneath him, causing it to rise up, forming stairs that led up through the hole in the ship that had been created. "Go," commanded Naruto, facing the captive children. The children scrambled to their feet, rushing up the stairs to what remained of the ship's deck. As they arrived, they were greeted with the sight of a giant, terrifying turtle-like creature, making them scream. "Do not be afraid, this is my good friend Isobu," spoke Naruto as he appeared at the top of the steps. He approached Isobu, gently patting the tailed beast's head. Naruto would quickly direct the children onto the giant turtle's shell, take them back to the village. With the command given, Isobu swam off, keeping above the water as he swam back towards Uzu no Kuni. With Gyuki roared with laughter as he jumped up out from the water, leaping high into the air. His massive shadow looming over the two ships as he came crashing down on the ship to the far right. Massive octopus-like tentacles wrapped around the ship's frame and began to squeeze, causing the wood to groan and break. The pirates roared as they drew their weapons and attacked. The sound of cannons filled the air as the ships attempted to fight back against the massive sea cane. Gyuki laughed only to release lightning nature chakra from every part of his body, encompassing the ship. Screams filled the air as the pirates were electrocuted with such force they were roasted alive. Gyuki proceeded to crush the ship, pushing it down into the depths of the water before he dived. Gyuki would then dive back underwater and swim beneath the second ship, his tentacles rising up out of the water to wrap around its frame. He pulled, dragging the giant ship down into the ocean's depths, using his chakra as a barrier to prevent anyone from escaping as he dragged them down to the ocean's depths and left them there to drown. Afterwards, Gyuki would swim back to the surface to see if Naruto would need his assistance. With the Naruto clone raced across the water's edge. The pirates had seen his approach and had fixed their cannons, bringing the clone into sight. The clone heard the explosive roars as the metal projectiles sailed towards him. "Fools!" Raising a right hand, the clone released a repulsive magnetic force that struck the projectiles, sending them flying back, striking the cannons, where they exploded, killing off their marksmen. The clone burst into action, increasing speed as he ran up the edge of the ship with the surface climbing method, appearing on the rails of the ship overlooking the crew with a bored expression. The clone slammed his hand onto the side of the ship, allowing for a giant blade to appear in a puff of smoke. The clone was taking a page out of an old friend's book. The clone gripped the handle of the massive blade that was easily twice his size, taking the shape of a giant butcher's knife. The blade itself had two cutouts, a circle close to the top and a semicircular one nearer the handle. The clone lifted the Kabikirabocho with his right hand, having dispelled the Shakuho back into its Gudadama form, before lifting his left hand into a hand ram seal. A thick mist appeared in the air as a demonic grin spread onto the clone's lips. The moment the mist rolled in, he moved, transforming into a blur, not making a single sound as he appeared in front of a man and swinging his giant blade, cleaving the pirate in two. The clone moved, making his way through the pirates, their blood staining the mist red as their cries filled the air. The pirates roared as they fired in every direction. They saw something move, taking out their own comrades as the clone moved between them, eliminating them one by one until none remained. As the mist began to clear, the deck was littered with corpses, blood seeping into the ocean and dyeing the wooden decks red. The clone plunged the Kabikirabocho into the deck, dispelling the blade, eyeing the wooden deck, sensing the signatures of those trapped beneath. Placing his hands together in the snake seal, the clone placed a hand onto the deck and used Mokuton nature chakra to rip the deck in half, causing it to tear apart, bending up into the air before shooting down, twisting into a pair of stairs. Light shined through the hole where it illuminated the cages beneath, revealing dozens of children no older than 12. Naruto scowled at the sight. This was a sight he never wanted to see for the young. The clone used the shadow clone technique to create a large number of clones to head down, freeing the children before each vanished through the use of the Hiraishin, teleporting back to the island. The clone jumped onto the water, watching as Isobu swam away with more children on his back. The clone closed his eyes and dispelled the piece of soul used to make him, was returned to the original. Back with the original. Naruto felt the clone dispel as its memories flooded his mindscape. He jumped onto the water, eyeing the remains of the two ships before him. Crimson-red chakra began to bubble up around Naruto as a long tail was grown from the base of his spine. A tail not like the 9 Biju, but one that was reminiscent of the Shinju when it took the form of the Jubi, 10 tails. Naruto brought his hands together, focusing positive black chakra in the left and negative white chakra in the right, merging the two together, creating a dark purple sphere which condensed itself. The moment the sphere condensed, the water around him burst up into the air, rippling wildly. Naruto eyed the two remaining ships and roared as he fired the mini Bijudama, tailed beast bomb. The sphere sailed through the air before it exploded, engulfing the two ships, obliterating them, leaving no trace they had ever existed. The wind rippled wildly around Naruto as he eyed his creation as it wiped ships from the planet. Naruto turned, his cloak dissipating, and started making his way back towards Uzu no Kuni. He had children to deal with. As Naruto walked, he couldn't help but think of what to do with the children. They had no homes to go back to. The immortal reached into the Biju deeper plane, connecting with Kurama as the visage of the giant fox-like tailed beast appeared in the air, visible only to him. "What will you do with the children, brat?" inquired Kurama, lying down on the ground, hands folded over one another, looking down at his old vessel with curiosity. "Sigh, I'm not sure. Those with parents would only be sold back into slavery, and those without would no doubt end up on the street, cold and alone. I don't want anyone to have to live like I had to as a child." "Then take them under your wing. You have only had myself and my siblings for company for the last 6,000 years. It would be nice for you to have a little human contact. You could rebuild Uzu Shiogakure back to its former glory. Allow your ancestors' legacy to live on." Naruto inhaled deeply as mulled over Kurama's words. Should he rebuild his clan's home? Could he take the children under his wing? They were unwanted with nowhere to go. He could offer them a new life, away from the hatred of the outside world, where they could be safe. Perhaps he could protect them, no, train them. His eyes widened at the thought of training a new generation. The only students he had ever taken had been Konohamaru and friends. Naruto steeled his emotions as he gained a look of determination, getting a raised eyebrow from Kurama. "What's going on inside that head of yours, brat? I have come to a decision. Even from here I can sense the negativity that plagues the world, so much hate it hurts. These children live in a hate-filled world. I shall take them in. I will rebuild Uzu Shiogakure, my home shall stand proud once again. I will bring back the age of chakra. I will jumpstart what little chakra these children have and train them as shinobi. I failed to bring peace to the shinobi nations. I will not fail this time. Time has taught me much, and the memories I have absorbed from Bluebeard have shown me how cruel the world government is. They will never understand peace by connecting with others, only through force. I now understand how Nagato, Obito and even Madara felt all those years ago." Naruto turned to Kurama, his eyes glowing as a burning determination coursed through his body. Kurama could only watch with pride as Naruto raced off, heading towards the island. It was time to see who would be willing to join him. A month had come to pass since that fateful day when Naruto clashed with the Blue Whale pirates and rescued the children that had been sold to them as slaves. The children rescued had been suspicious of Naruto at first, especially when he offered them the chance to live on Uzu no Kuni with him. The suspicion they felt was understandable, considering what they had gone through. Over time Naruto was able to overcome this bridge, connecting to them through the use of ninshu, sharing his thoughts and feelings through chakra. Thanks to the assistance of the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, the reconstruction of Uzushiogakure had begun. Through the usage of Doden ninjutsu, the surrounding rubble and ruins had been cleared away. All of the graves belonging to the Uzumaki kinsmen had been relocated to a large clearing behind the Uzumaki clan compound, that had been transformed into a field of beautiful flowers with the use of Mokuton ninjutsu. Through the use of Mokuton and Doden ninjutsu, he had started clearing the Uzumaki compound out and the area surrounding it, creating new living arrangements for those now under his reign. The first building after the accommodations to be restored was the Shinobi Academy. The construction had begun within the first week, and by the following week, those who wished to become shinobi were sorted into appropriate classes to be instructed by his clones. It would be some time before he had proper instructors. The process of restarting the shinobi program would take years, with training and increasing not only the village's manpower but population. On top of that, Naruto had to place focus on the necessary resources to create stability. Mokuton ninjutsu could help to elevate the worry of crops and lumber, while Doden ninjutsu could be used to create concrete, and the Banbutsu Sozo, creation of all things, allowed him to make metal. However, there was the issue of other food sources. The new citizens of Uzushiogakure couldn't live off the fruits and vegetables he grew or the marine life from the sea. They would need to expand their diet. That was why he had split his soul in half, reforming his unique Kage Bunshin and sent it out into the world. The clone had more than enough chakra to run across the water to find new lands, discovering unique breeds to bring back to Uzu no Kuni, where they would be bred as a suitable food source. With the month gone by, Naruto had strangely found himself with his own personal student, one not instructed by a clone. The student he had taken was none other than the young girl he had found on the slave ship, Suzuka, the girl who tried to protect those younger than she. Suzuka had approached him and begged him to train her. Flashback. Naruto looked out to sea. 3 weeks had gone by since the rescued children had been brought to Uzu no Kuni. His clones were slowly rebuilding his ancestral home of Uzushiogakure, restoring it to its former glory. Said clones were supervising the children, tending to their daily needs. A part of him wondered if he was capable of looking after them. In the past, Naruto had never had people that needed to rely on him like now. The only time someone had ever relied on him was to watch their back in battle. With a long sigh, he rubbed his temples, contemplating what to do. He didn't know how to raise children, especially with 3-year-olds running around. Sensing a presence, Naruto spun around, forming a half-ram seal out, a reflex before coming to a stop. Standing a few meters from him was the young girl who had stood bravely to protect the children on the ship, Suzuka, if his memory served him right. The girl was notably startled by his reaction. Naruto noted she was healthier than last he laid eyes on her, having gained a little weight. "Gamensai, I didn't mean to sneak up on you." Her voice was soft, yet timid as she approached him shyly, fingers poking together. He could not help but be reminded of Hinata, the girl who had professed her love while risking her life to protect him from Nagato. "Can I help you?" inquired the sage as he eyed the young girl curiously. Suzuka inhaled before she shut her eyes and bowed, holding her arms to the side. "Please train me," Suzuka all but shouted at him. There was a clear determination in her voice, as if to say she wouldn't leave unless he accepted. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the girl's actions, somewhat surprised. Of the children rescued, she had been the first to approach him of their own accord, and this was what she was asking. The girl took a step back and looked up with fire in her eyes. "I know you offered to train us all, but I want to become stronger. As the oldest, I should have been able to protect them, but I was weak, but I was nothing but a failure. That's why I ask, no beg of you to teach me, please make me stronger to protect them, all of them. You won't always be there to protect us, so I want to be able to when you can't. So please teach me," Suzuka begged as she looked at him. A clear determination with those chocolate-brown hue. There was no sign of giving up reflected inside. Naruto sighed, giving the back of his head an awkward rub while thinking over the proposal. Those who wanted to be trained, he would train in basic arts, then allow them to pick a shinobi or kunoichi from his past to model themselves after. But this girl wanted to be personally trained by him. Could he take on a student? Thoughts of Konohamaru came to the forefront, only to be pushed down. Naruto couldn't help but groan while giving his hair a tug. What to do? A deep breath was taken to calm unsettled thoughts before the powerful gaze of the Rinne Sharingan was placed on the girl. She certainly had passion, was Naruto's first thought. Naruto couldn't help but be reminded of his past self. The way she wanted to be strong to protect others, however, reminded him of someone, bringing up the memory of Haku's words as they echoed in his inner thoughts. When a person has something important they want to protect, that's when they can become truly strong. Suzuka had barely known those children, but she had wanted nothing more than to protect them. He could respect that. Naruto looked down at the girl, eyes widening as a vision of all his past comrades and loved ones appeared standing behind the blossoming young woman. The first was none other than the man who had been like a grandfather to him, Sarutobi Hiruzen. The Sandaime Hokage stood behind Suzuka, a hand being placed on her right shoulder. Standing behind the third were his teachers over the years, Iruka, Kakashi and Jiraiya, each looked on with beaming smiles. Surrounding her were all his past comrades Sasuke, Sakura, Sai, Gaara, Killer Bee, Ino, Kiba, Shikamaru, Choji, Hinata, Neji, Rock Lee, Tenten and Shino. He could even see Konohamaru, Inari and many others who he met with appearing before his very eyes. Naruto shut his eyes. It seemed his old comrades were telling him to pass on the will of fire. Even from the grave, they were always guiding him. "All right, I'll train you. I will make you strong. But I warn you, it won't be easy. There will be blood, sweat, tears and pain, but you will become a kunoichi worthy of being called my pupil," Naruto declared, showing a fox-like grin. The girl, Suzuka, beamed at him, nodding her head rapidly, and with that, it had begun. End flashback. Taking Suzuka under his wing had first required the jump-starting of her chakra's circulatory system. Like all the other children, her tenketsu were solid, and she only had enough chakra to live, but being young he could reactivate her chakra network. The problem with attempting to jump-start Suzuka's chakra system is she was 15 years old and the coils in her body had become rigid due to her approaching adulthood. Attempting to activate her chakra system and expand her tenketsu was going to be a painful process, which it had been. Naruto used his chakra to forcibly open Suzuka's tenketsu, mixing his chakra with hers. During the entire procedure, Naruto had to drown out Suzuka's blood-curdling screams as she withered around in pain, nails tearing away at flesh, drawing blood. It reached the point Naruto had to hold her down, using the Mokuton to produce a number of roots to coil around Suzuka's body and pin her in place. If he hadn't, there was a chance she would have struggled so much that her neck would have snapped from the force of her movements. The process of expanding Suzuka's chakra coils had taken 15 long grueling hours of torture and pain, but finally, he had done it. After 15 hours of pain, her chakra coils had widened as the flow of chakra coursing through Suzuka's body increases. By the end, the size of the young woman's reserves had expanded, growing to the size of a mid-genin. The strain on her body had left her exhausted, pale, weak and bedridden. Someone whose body had never naturally grown with chakra would find themselves having a hard time, as their body needed time to recover and grow accustomed to the sudden change. It would take 7 days' worth of bed rest for Suzuka to fully recover and be functional once more. Once Naruto's student had been fully recovered, the sage was only comprising a training plan. The idea was to start with the basics and get her used to the flow of the new energy coursing through her veins. It would be best to start off with basic chakra exercises, learning how to feel the flow of chakra and channel it through her body, before starting on chakra control exercises. At the same time, start on simple physical exercises to develop and strengthen the body. Afterwards, instruction into the basic fields of the shinobi could begin, primarily bukujutsu, ninjutsu, taijutsu and genjutsu. Naruto walked through the halls of his compound smiling as children ran past. It was nice to see that after a month some of them had relaxed enough and had begun to enjoy their time on the island. The island was going to get livelier with them around. Seeing the dojo coming into sight, Naruto slid the door open and was greeted to the sight of Suzuka sitting Seiza in the middle of the room. Naruto approached his student, bowing politely to her. "Good morning, Suzuka-chan," greeted the sage, taking a seat on the dojo floor with his legs crossed. "Good morning, sensei." Suzuka would return the greeting by performing a polite bow, as was customary between teacher and student. If one took notice, one would spot a noticeable blush forming on Suzuka's snowy cheeks. Naruto gave her a heartwarming smile in response. Even he couldn't help but take note that the young woman was exceptionally beautiful for her age, with a heart-shaped face, supple lips and snow-white skin. To begin your studies, let me ask you this: do you know what chakra is? Naruto was answered by receiving a confused expression, one that had been expected, having only asked to satisfy his curiosity. Shutting his eyes, the immortal sage peered into the deepest pits of his inner world, scouring the memories that once belonged to former academy instructor Iruka. A sadness rose up inside of Naruto, reflecting on the loss of his brother figure, but pushed it down to focus on the task at hand. In every living thing, humans, animals, plants, there exists a force known as chakra. It is what allows us to live. Chakra is created when two forms of energy, physical energy and mental energy, are combined, thus creating chakra. Physical energy represents the size of one's chakra reserves, while spiritual energy dictates one's control over their reserves. Through training and physical stimulus, one can increase their physical energy. Whereas through study, experience, mediation and training, one can boost their spiritual energy. With time, chakra will increase naturally with age. Through the use of hand seals, one can learn to manipulate their chakra to perform feats thought unimaginable, feats that believed could only be used through the use of a devil fruit. Abilities such as manipulating of the elements or cloning. In the body you possess 361 tenketsu or chakra points. It's thanks to these points located on the chakra pathway system. Much like the blood system, I can use my chakra to perform an assortment of techniques, and you will be able to as well. Last week I mixed my chakra into your chakra system to force open your tenketsu and chakra pathways. You see, a normal human by the age of adulthood, typically around 16 to 18, their tenketsu completely close and become rigid, meaning they will never be able to use their chakra, which is why one must start at a young age, typically between 5 and 10, as one's chakra system is still flexible. Of course, you can still learn from the age of 11 till around the age of 16, as your chakra pathways are still flexible enough. However, the older you are, the more painful it is to force open your pathways to enable you access your chakra. This experience you know all too well. As you come to utilize your chakra, you will learn about shape transformation and nature transformation. Shape transformation is an advanced form of chakra control that involves changing the form and movement of chakra, determining the size, range, and purpose of a technique. Shape transformation is one of two necessary components for creating or modifying a technique, the second component being nature transformation. While shape transformation changes the form and movement of chakra, nature transformation changes the actual nature of the chakra, altering its properties and characteristics. Nature transformation is the second part in forming techniques. Nature transformation is an advanced form of chakra control that entails the molding and defining of one's chakra into an innate kind of chakra nature, altering its properties and characteristics for use in techniques. Every person who possesses chakra is attuned to what my people used to call Godai Seishitsu Henka, or the 5 elements nature transformation. There exists 5 basic elements for chakra: fire, wind, lightning, earth and water, each stronger than one element but weaker than another. Everyone is attuned to at least one of these elements, and it is possible to learn how to control another through rigorous training. However, just because you are attuned to one element does not mean you cannot learn techniques of another. It will just require the use of more chakra to perform. Explained Naruto, taking breaths in between his lecture, before removing a piece of paper and holding it up for Suzuka to examine. This is chakra paper. By channeling chakra into this paper, it will reveal your element affinity. If the paper burns, then you have a fire element. If the paper is cut, the wind is your element. If the paper wrinkles, that means lightning. If the paper turns to dirt or mud, that reveals an earth nature. Lastly, if the paper becomes wet or damp, it shows a water element. The stronger the reaction, the stronger your affinity. Naruto held the paper in his hand and channeled his chakra into it. The paper suddenly shredded itself into 100 equal pieces. 25 of these pieces burst into flames. The next 25 became incredibly damp, 25 turned into mud and faded away, while the last 25 wrinkled up into tight little balls. As you can see, I am a rare case possessing all 5 element transformations," said Naruto, showing a smile. Suzuka seemed to be rapt by his abilities. Naruto cleared his throat, drawing Suzuka's attention to the new piece of paper he had pulled out and offered to her. "Let's see if we can get you to access your chakra. Now I don't expect you to get it right away or to be able to channel your chakra into that paper, but we can try. Now please sit like me." Naruto crossed his legs over and sat in a lotus position where Suzuka soon followed with a little bit of difficulty. "What I want you to do is shut your eyes, then take a deep breath in, hold it for a few seconds then release it. Continue this as you look deep inside of yourself. I want you to ignore everything, shut yourself off to the world and find your chakra. Your chakra should feel light, full of warmth, dancing like a flame. Search for this and once you've found it grab hold of it tightly. Once you have a hold of it, I want you to bring it to the surface." Naruto closed his eyes and took in a long deep breath. Suzuka closed her eyes doing as Naruto instructed, taking a breath through her nose and counted to 3 before releasing it slowly, exhaling from the mouth. The young woman repeated by inhaling through her nose and exhaling out from the mouth. With every breath she felt her body relaxing. As her body relaxed, Suzuka began to focusing on her breathing and attempting to locate her chakra, letting time simply pass by without a worry. She tried to look deep inside what was the core of her body as structured, though she wasn't entirely sure what Naruto meant but held trust in his words. Suzuka felt her chest rise and fall, drawing out all noise in the process, forgetting about everything all to place focus on the task at hand. A warm feeling arose in her stomach, as strange sensation emerged and washed over her very being. Eyes clenched down hard as the young woman reached towards the warm feeling that was emitting from her core. Her world became surrounded in darkness, but there was a light slowly illuminating the void, as a wild flame burning a bright sapphire. Suzuka reached towards the flame using her thoughts to grab hold of it. The fire felt warm and that warmth soon flooded through every fiber of her being. Suzuka's eyes flew open as a gasp escaped her lips, as a sudden rush overcame it, as what felt like fire coursed through her veins. A light blue hum radiated around her body that made the young woman freak, as she jumped to her feet only for the light to slowly die down before it vanished. Suzuka couldn't help but look over herself, finding that she was unharmed, earning a chuckle from the eternal sage. Suzuka turned to face Naruto, who was chuckling lightly at her. The black-haired beauty glared weakly at him. "Congratulations, you found your chakra in only 5 hours, faster than I had expected," complimented Naruto, getting a look of disbelief from the girl at how long she had been sitting there. "Let's see if you can grab hold of your chakra again. Once you have, I want you to think of it as a river and direct it into the palms of your hands and down into the paper." "Hi sensei," responded Suzuka, taking a seat on the ground once more in the lotus position. Giving scrutiny to the paper in her palm, Suzuka closed both eyes, starting the breathing exercises once more. Breathing became focused, as a warmth began to spread through her like last time as she sought it out. Suzuka latched onto the flame once more and let it spread through her body. Eyes slowly opened as a soft blue glow illuminated them. Focus hardened as the young woman tried to direct the flow as instructed, thinking of it as a river. Suzuka could feel it traveling through her body, up to her arm and down into the piece of paper. The chakra paper did something that completely shocked Naruto. The paper in Suzuka's hands was cut in half before the left piece became damp while the right section crumbled away into dirt, signaling the young girl had 3 elemental affinities. Naruto could only look on in shock. He had never seen this before. None of the memories he had absorbed had. Sure, it was heard of for people born with 2 natural affinities, but that was rare. The only other way for someone to have 2 natural affinities is when they had a Kekkei Genkei. What he had seen was unheard of. Not only had his student unlocked her chakra in a matter of hours, but she had been able to direct it, revealing 3 element affinities. Naruto could only describe her as naturally gifted. Naruto came out of his shock before he began to clap in congratulations of his student. "Congratulations Suzuka-chan, you have 3 natural affinities for wind, water and earth." The young woman couldn't help but blush at the praise, face turning as red as a tomato. "Now then, how about some tea?" The girl nodded her head in the affirmative. With a smile, Naruto jumped to his feet and helped Suzuka up, before they left the dojo for the main section or the Uzumaki compound. 11 years 9 months before canon. 2 months had passed since Naruto had become Suzuka's teacher, and he was thoroughly astounded by her level of growth over the last couple of months, soaking up everything she was taught like a sponge. In just 2 months they had worked on increasing not only her chakra reserves but also her level of chakra control. Focus had primarily been placed with the leaf sticking and tree climbing exercise. However, Suzuka was already showing an exceptional degree of control. To the point, she was able to master the two exercises relatively quickly, within days of each other. To compensate, Naruto started Suzuka on the water walking exercise. On top chakra control, he had been instructing Suzuka in the basics behind the Hyugas, Jukin, gentle fist, from the memories he had obtained from Hinata and her clansmen. Suzuka would never be able to use the Jukin's full capabilities without the Byakugan, so it was being modified to be adapted to strike the pressure points and vital organs in the human body. Unlike the normal stiff Jukin, Naruto had worked to introduce Hinata's own Yuho or gentle step, a style designed more for a flexible body type. The Jukin was more for someone with an earth nature as its movements were stiff and rigid movements. The Yuho, gentle step, was the polar opposite, with swift, flexible movements suitable for a water user. Being that Suzuka possessed both elements, Naruto was looking to combine both fighting forms. It didn't hurt that Naruto was also focusing on a style he had acquired from a couple of shinobi that belonged to Sanagakure no Sato. The particular style he had picked up was suitable for those with a wind affinity. The style G was known as the Arakan or Gale Fist, which on swift, piercing and precise movements. Said style relied heavily on speed instead of strength, aiming to deliver combo blows as quickly as possible to vulnerable areas. The Arakan was most suitable for assassins as most strikes were designed to kill with a single strike or render the enemy unconscious, while others would disable limbs. To ensure Suzuka would be able to use the combined taijutsu styles, Naruto had equipped her with weight seals on both ankles and wrists. Currently, each seal was set to 25 kilograms, giving her an added weight of 100 kilograms to carry around, nowhere near what Lee and Guy used to carry around. Naruto himself barely wore weight seals or weights themselves, seeing as he was fast enough as it was and could augment his physical abilities thanks to the massive chakra reserves he possessed. Aside from taijutsu, Naruto had placed focus on bukajutsu, first starting with shurikenjutsu. Quickly it became apparent the young woman had a flair for weapons. After experimentation, the two found Suzuka was more attuned to senbon, so using memories he had acquired from Shizune, Naruto was able to instruct Suzuka in the proper use of the long needles. Another discovery he made was when they started on jutsu that, like senbon, Suzuka had an aptitude for genjutsu more than ninjutsu, so he had focused on that area. Seeing as he originally never had a talent for genjutsu and even now it wasn't something he specialized in, he dipped into the memories gained from Yuhi Kurenai along with one of Konoha's advisors Utatane, Kaharu. With the memories of Team 8's Sensei and Kaharu, Suzuka had been taught 4 simple illusions with a bonus of a 5th slightly more advanced technique. The first 4 taught were a combination of 1D rank and 3C ranks, those being the Magen, Kokohi no Jutsu, demonic illusions, false surroundings technique, Magen, Narukumi no Jutsu, demonic illusion, hell viewing technique, Magen, Jigoku Goka no Jutsu, demonic illusion, hellfire technique, and Kori Shinchu no Jutsu, sly mind effect technique. The 5th jutsu was a more advanced form of the Kokohi no Jutsu, a B-rank technique, the Magen, Niju Kokoni Arizu no Jutsu, demonic illusion, double false surroundings technique. Currently, both student and teacher could be found at one of the training fields. Naruto had fixed up training field 3. Naruto was standing opposite Suzuka, arms crossed over his chest, while Suzuka had slipped into the familiar stance of the Jukin but with a little Yuho mixed in. "Alright, come at me, let's see if your training has paid off," instructed Naruto while standing in a relaxed position, arms being kept in their folded position. Suzuka nodded before charging towards Naruto, attacking from the front. The young woman was moving at mid-genin level speeds, a drastic improvement compared to physical movements 2 months ago. All up, Naruto estimated Suzuka was about high genin. Of course, this was without the use of weights, but he had restricted her from taking them off. If the weights were removed, Suzuka's abilities would be elevated to low chunin. Suzuka darted in, giving a battle cry, delivering a swift strike with her right hand, index and middle fingers extended as they glowered with chakra. Naruto took a step back, moving out of attack range. Suzuka stepped forward, hands moving as she lunged, quickly jabbing with a flurry of Jukin strikes, going for a frontal assault. Naruto stepped around each blow, moving with ease as if he was dancing. Suzuka kept calm, knowing she had zero chance of hitting her sensei as he was naturally superior in all aspects, but that didn't mean she wasn't going to try. Digging her right heel in, Suzuka followed up with an open palm from her left hand, bringing it low, aiming for Naruto's solar plexus. Naruto eyed the incoming attack and took a sidestep to avoid the blow. Suzuka performed spinning motion, the spin hiding her incoming attack as right leg lashed up in a high kick. Naruto ducked down to avoid the inbound leg, eyes narrowing as Suzuka shifted her body weight, foot touching the ground, before lunging, attempting a dual Juken strike towards his chest and torso. The sage went into a side roll to avoid the incoming attacks and jumped up to his feet, deciding to retaliate. Naruto moved at higher speeds than Suzuka could track and appeared in front of her. The action caught her completely off guard. Naruto clenched a fist and delivered a swift right hook atop Suzuka's budding chest. The young woman cried out and was sent flying back across the training field, hitting the ground with a thud and rolling across it. Suzuka came to a halt over 15 meters away and simply lay there in pain. The young girl bit down on her cheek and struggled to her feet, ignoring the pain. Suzuka's body shook with pain from that single blow, but she resisted the urge to whimper. Propping herself up to her knees, the girl looked towards her teacher. She had never expected him to attack. "I never said I wouldn't strike back. This will help you learn to anticipate your opponent's moves as well as boost your stamina and durability. If you do not have the stamina to last in a long drawn-out battle, it will be your downfall. The same can be said if you are unable to withstand your opponent's blows," lectured the sage as he folded his arms back over his chest. It was almost as if he knew what she had been thinking. The amalgamation of the memories from the Junin instructors and the academy instructors from Konoha had allowed him to view their various teaching methods. Not only did he have the teaching methods of the instructors from Konoha, but from every shinobi nation, and every single one of them had different methods, so he had mixed them, taking pieces here and there before adding his spin. "Now come, let us resume," beckoned Naruto, instructing his student to attack. In response, Suzuka kicked off the ground, moving towards him. Suzuka closed in, molding chakra into her left palm, and struck upwards towards him, expelling that chakra on impact. Shote, palm bottom. Naruto watched the incoming attack and allowed the blow to connect. He felt chakra explode through his body, ripping it apart and erupt out of the back. Grunting, the sage dug his heels into the ground and grabbed Suzuka by the wrist with his right hand. Revealing a smirk, the sage spun on his heels and threw Suzuka across the training field, launching her a good 10 feet up into the air. Suzuka flipped in mid-air, landing on the ground in a crouched position, deciding it was a good idea to change up her strategy. Hands blurred into action, forming the dragon, tiger, and lastly the hare hand seal. Naruto raised a curious eyebrow as he recognized the technique, one which he hadn't taught her. Sweden. Mizurapa, water release, violent water wave. Suzuka took a deep breath as water nature chakra was molded into her lungs. Suzuka leaned forward, lips parted as a violent stream of water was exhaled that sped, exhaling a forceful stream of water that raced across the terrain, heading straight for Naruto. Naruto inhaled, not even bothering to form the hand seals, while molding fire chakra directly into his lungs. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball. Naruto parted his lips, expelling a giant fireball that rocketed forward, colliding with the incoming water stream. The moment Naruto's fireball made contact, steam engulfed the training field, blocking the two from each other. Naruto peered through the mist, watching as 3 Suzukas charged him head-on. 2 of the Suzukas contained 1/10 of his student's chakra, Mizu Bunshin's. That was another skill he hadn't taught her. Naruto dug his heels in as the Suzukas 3 charged him head-on, all of them 3 a handful of senbon in his direction. Naruto molded wind nature chakra and gave a swung of his right hand in the direction of the needles, releasing a small blast of wind that tossed the senbon aside. As the senbon scattered, he took note that one of the Suzukas had disappeared, the original, as only the clones were left. The 2 clones moved in, hands glowing as they attempted a Juken strike. Naruto retaliated, fists connecting with the clones before they could close in. Chakra erupted from his Bakuhatsu element came into play and obliterated the 2 clones. Eyes narrowed as Naruto detected a chakra signature coming from behind. Turning his body, Suzuka popped up from the earth, chakra swirling around her left hand in the shape of a lion's head. Yuho Shiken, gentle step lion's fist. Shouted the original Suzuka, tiny fist making contact with her sensei's back. The fierce chakra dug into Naruto's back, tearing away at his clothing and blasted him through the air. Naruto flew through the air before hitting the ground with a loud thud. The back of his robe had been torn open and flesh severely scarred. The eternal sage climbed onto both knees and dusted his robe off, his chakra working to knit the injury back together before chakra flowed into the robe, allowing the chakra-made clothing to repair itself. He hadn't expected her to know the Doten. Dochu Eigyo no Jutsu, Earth Release. Underground projection fish technique. It seemed his cute little student had been doing some training of her own when he wasn't around. Well, now that was certainly unexpected. Not only do you know the Mizurapa and Mizu Bunshin, but you added the Dochu Eigyodo to your repertoire. You caught me by surprise and managed to land a blow. I may not have been taking things seriously, but you've surprised me. Well done. Complimented Naruto, turning to face his student who had fallen onto both knees in exhaust, panting hard as sweat dripped from her body. It seemed she had used a little too much chakra. It was to be expected. Even though her chakra reserves had been expended, they were only around that of a high genin, and using 3 C-rank techniques plus the B-rank Yuho Shiken had exhausted a good portion of her chakra. Suzuka looked up at her sensei, continuing to pant heavily, not having realized just how much those techniques would take out of her. Using ninjutsu exhausted her a lot more than genjutsu did, that was for sure. Suzuka greedily gulped down air, filling her lungs. Arigato sensei. I picked them up from the Uzushiogakure Shinobi library. Quote, clever girl, you did well today. Now let's get some ramen, my treat. Naruto flashed a foxy smile and extended a hand for her take. Suzuka accepted the other, allowing Naruto to pull her onto both feet before supporting the young girl's frame as they headed into the village to eat. 11 years before canon. 11 months had come to pass since Naruto's decision to accept Suzuka as his student. In those 11 months, Uzushiogakure had begun to blossom. The ruins of the village had been completely removed and restored, appearing as if it had never been destroyed. Surrounding the new Uzushiogakure was a large concrete wall that surrounded the growing village on all sides. There was only one entrance, a sizable wooden gate on the south side of the village. At the north of Uzushiogakure was a large mountain created by Naruto himself with Doten ninjutsu. On the mountain were the faces of the past 5 Hokages facing south, the direction of the village. The mountain stretched out to the east and west of the village, connecting to the concrete walls. The terrain of the mountain was rugged, ensuring that the only point of entry for invaders would be the south. Even if they did manage to make it up the mountain, Naruto had a little surprise in store for them. The entire village was protected by a barrier that was only visible to Naruto and a few others. Naruto could currently be found atop his father's head, gaze cast out across the village that had rebuilt. Rinne's Sharingan stared off into the distance, allowing him to see tiny figures moving about. A memory of Konoha came up, the memory of when he used to sit on his father's head in his youth, using the time to think. Naruto couldn't help but remember the last time he did so. It was just before the war. He had thought what it would have been like if Obito had survived his ordeal and returned to Konoha. If Obito had returned, would his parents have still been alive? Would Nagato not have been manipulated by Obito and the Black Zetsu? Perhaps Kagaya may never have been revived, and he would have died years ago with a loving family. Naruto shook the thoughts aside, deciding it was best not to reflect on the past, especially the past from thousands of years ago, instead deciding to reflect on the now. In the past few months on the mountain surrounding Uzushiogakure north side, he had built 9 shrines, each to represent one of the 9 Biju. The children had requested that he make the shrines in honor of the beasts. He felt it was rather funny. The first time they had seen the Biju they had been scared, but when he had reassured them the Biju were there to protect them, the children had begun calling them their guardian angels. It was a funny sight to see Kurama blush at that, so as a show of faith he did as requested and built the shrines. Every Sunday the children would transverse the mountain using the stairwells that had been built and connected to the village to place gifts upon the shrines. The first time he had seen Matabi shrunken down to the size of a kitten to play with one of the balls of yarn she was given amused him greatly. What delighted him the most, however, was seeing the bloodthirsty Shukaku take a shine to the kids. Shukaku had taken to utilizing his sand manipulation to build giant sand castles and forts for the children to play in. Then there was Kakuo. She had become something of a mother hen tending to the orphans in a much smaller form. Isobue and Gyuki had taken to remain in the ocean, keeping a lookout for invaders. Kurama had taken to solitude, sleeping deep beneath the village. Sun could often be seen lazing about in the surrounding forest. As for Chomei and Saiken, they spent their time sleeping, only coming out during the night to watch over the village. To accommodate the 9 Biju in their full size, Naruto had used a combination of Mokuton and Doden ninjutsu to increase the size of Uzu no Kuni, making it nearly 10 times its original size, reaching such mass that Uzu Shiogakure was stationed in the middle of the island. To realize the size of the island, to travel from the shoreline to Uzu Shiogakure on foot at walking speed, it would take a week. It took 3 days to travel from Konoha to the land of waves. The crops Naruto had given birth to were in full bloom, supplying much-needed resources to the village. His clone had returned 3 months ago with various kinds of livestock to be raised on the farm. The livestock took the form of your typical cows, chickens and sheep, with a few unique species he had never seen before. Clones could be seen tending to the animals along with the crops, all the while teaching the children who had chosen the civilian path how to manage the creatures brought to the island. The clones were also instructing the children how to farm the land. Naruto's thoughts soon moved on, thinking about what he was doing. Why had he decided to bring back the age of chakra? Naruto believed he was bringing it back to establish peace, but with ever thought, he would have clouded visions. Chakra had brought nothing but death, suffering and bloodshed during his time, and now he was bringing it back. He was bringing back the endless cycle of hatred, and for what? Naruto detected an approaching chakra signature and looked over his shoulder to see a miniature Kurama walking towards him. The 9-tailed fox had shrunken down to the size of a large dog. The Biju often shrunk themselves down to walk around the village. I know that expression. Tell me what is on your mind, Gaki. The strongest of the 9 sat down on the right of his old friend. Naruto gave a small smile. Even after all these years, Kurama always knew when something was up. I've been thinking about what I'm going to do. Uzu Shiogakure is on the return, but I doubt my abilities to keep everyone safe. The children look to me to take care of them. They trust me, and I don't want to break that trust. Now I have brought them into a world they should never have been a part of. I have begun the process of bringing back the age of the shinobi, an era that had a cycle of never-ending hate. The sage looked down at his hands, clenching them tightly. I am the start to an endless saga of bloodshed. I have done the opposite to what Hagoromo Oji-san wanted. Kurama eyed his longtime friend, one of his tails snapping through the air to whack him upside the head, getting a surprised look from the white-haired shinobi. Don't be a fool. You are better than your predecessors. Even now you prove that by worrying. You are a kind and compassionate, always willing to lend a hand for what is right. You have the power that they never possessed. You have the power to make friends with your enemies. You have a unique gift, and that gift you will pass on to those children down there. You carry the will of fire that has been passed down from generation to generation. You have the chance to guide this new era, to teach them, to look over them. My father passed on his teachings and left, allowing the ninjin to do as they pleased, corrupting ninshu, but I know you will guide them properly. Hashirama failed, Tobirama failed, Hiruzen failed, and even your father failed to bring peace, but you have the chance to do that. Bring about a cycle of peace, not hatred, for the shinobi. This world needs a new savior. It needs you, Naruto. Barked Kurama as he rose to his feet, tails flailing around wildly as he gazed out onto the village, the moon beaming down upon them. My siblings and I will stand by you, Naruto. We put our faith in you, as did the elemental nations. The Gokage, your father, my father, the past Kages and your comrades, all of them passed their will of fire onto you. You carry the will of your people. You can do them proud by rising to the challenge. Break the cycle of hatred which exists in this new world, become its savior. Kurama's voice boomed, echoing over the village as he stared at his friend, eyes burning with a fire just like they had during the Fourth Shinobi World War. Naruto chuckled and climbed onto 2 feet. Kurama's words had struck a chord deep inside him. Naruto extended his right fist towards Kurama just like old times, revealing a smirk that was matched by the tailed beast. Kurama raised his right fist, bumping it against Naruto's as they exchanged chakra. Thanks, Kurama, I needed that. If you mention a word of this conversation to the others, I'll kill you. Naruto laughed at that. Kurama had grown into a big old softy over the years, not that he would ever admit to it. I thought I was all alone. But I have you and the other Biju to lend me your support. Kurama shook his head and looked to the village. You have them and us. These children, I can see it in their eyes, they will stand by you. You have their trust and loyalty. Then there is your student, I can see it in her eyes, she would fight beside you to hell and back. Naruto looked to the moon, mind wandering to thoughts of his student. It had been 8 months since his little sparring session with Suzuka, and she had only continued to grow in leaps and bounds. The amount of chakra she possessed had grown, reaching that of a mid-chunin. Her skills in ninjutsu had expanded, by adding a couple more elemental techniques to her arsenal, acquiring 2 new Doten ninjutsu, the first AB rank, the Doten Doryuheki, Earth Release, Earth-style wall, for defense, and the other AD rank ninjutsu, Doten Doryu Taiga, Earth Release, Earth Flow River, a support-based technique. Her Suiden ninjutsu had expanded with 2 new techniques as well, both C rank, Suiden Teppodama, Water Release, Gunshot, for offensive and a support, Suiden Mizuame Nabara, Water Release, Starch Syrup Capture Field. Lastly, for wind, Suzuka had learned the C-rank Futon ninjutsu, Fuuden Daitopa, Wind Release, Great Breakthrough. As for taijutsu, Suzuka was developing nicely and the 3 styles that had been mixed to create her own. Naruto had gone easy on her in the first spar, but he was gradually increasing the difficulty every time she landed a hit. Of course, with every increase in difficulty, Naruto would reveal more of his arsenal. After all, he had to keep Suzuka on her toes. Above all else, Suzuka had developed tremendously in the field of genjutsu, making leaps and bounds. Sure, she had added only a small number to her repertoire, but she had mastered them to the point she didn't need hand seals. The first 3 were 3 B-rank techniques: Hanabira Tokashi, Flower Petal Dissolve, Magen Jubaku Satsu, Demonic Illusion, Tree Binding Death, and the Magen Niju Kokoni Arizu no Jutsu, Demonic Illusion, Double False Surroundings technique. The 4th genjutsu she had learnt was the A-rank jutsu, Nihon Shoja no Jutsu, Temple of Nirvana technique. The rate at which she was learning was astounding. Suzuka would indeed become a powerful kunoichi one day. She will indeed make a strong kunoichi in the coming future. The fox seemed to know what his friends were thinking as the 2 watched the moon. As will the other children. The curriculum you have implemented into the academy will see to that. Naruto looked down to the village, his eyes locking onto the shinobi academy. Cage bunshin with memories of his comrades were being used to teach the children who had registered to try and become shinobi. By next year he would have his first genin teams. Personally, Naruto would have preferred the children stay in the academy for at least 5 years, that way he could ensure that they had the necessary skills. But time was short, so a wartime program had been implemented. The idea was to cram as much as possible while increasing the number of days and hours they spent a week at the academy. The children were young, so their minds and bodies were still malleable. The memories of the academy curriculum from when Konoha was in times of war was used. All thanks to absorbing the memories of a Zetsu that used to be one of Konoha's advisors, Mitokado Homura. The curriculum was designed to pump out high-level shinobi in 2 years or less. The children would be taught how to access their chakra within the first week, followed by beginning their lessons in chakra control, taijutsu, shurikenjutsu, kunaijutsu, elemental natures, elemental clones, henge and kawarimi. After that, lessons on ninjutsu, advanced taijutsu, genjutsu, fuinjutsu and bukajutsu would begin. Each of the students would be required to pick 2 specialities with 1 sub-speciality, which would be all they focused on for the next year and a bit. At the end of every school week, it would be necessary for Naruto to pump chakra into the chakra network of each child to forcibly expand them while allowing them to get used to the growth over the weekend. The kids would also all be trained in stealth, espionage, sabotage, assassination and reconnaissance. 3 months before graduating they would each be given a rabbit to look after and to love. Upon graduation, they would be told to kill their pet. A harsh method, but it would prevent them from freezing up on the battlefield when they took their first life. I just hope I don't destroy their childhood by forcing them into this life so early. The memories he had from numerous shinobi who had taken part during the previous wars were horrifying. They had seen many horrors which they had not been prepared. The truth is, Gaki, these children lost their childhood the moment they were sold into slavery. What you have done is give them a new life, a purpose. When the time comes, they will help save others just like you saved them. You have clones scouring the world at this very minute hunting down these slave traders, sending you their locations so you may remove them. I may despise you ninjas, but even I do not agree with slavery. I would gladly wipe these pond scum from the face of the planet." Naruto smirked at his friend. It seemed the two shared similar views. He could always count on Kurama to be there for him. The two always knew what the other was thinking. If Naruto was honest, the fox was his best friend. Speaking of slave traders, one of my clones reported back to me earlier about a pair of sisters. "Oh? And what has caused your interest in them?" "Their parents sold them into slavery last year. The oldest, her name is Kuroka, aged 8, and her sister is Sharon, aged 3. The two were force-fed something called an Akuma no Mi, a strange fruit that gifts people unique abilities, kind of like Kekkei Genkei. The price of a devil fruit user is incredibly high, even more so considering these two girls were force-fed rare fruits." "Rare?" "Two unique zone-class fruit, Neko no Mi. Madoru. Kuro and Shiro Nekomata. Polar opposite fruits but quite the same. The older sister Kuroka is apparently quite feisty and has attacked all of her masters to protect her sister, killing them each time. But instead of killing her, they simply sell her and her sister again. They are currently on their way to a place called Elneil. The new crowned king wishes to take them as his concubines when they come of age. Foolish ninjas, always taking what does not belong to them." The walking mass of destruction sneered at what had been revealed. He would never understand the mind of these meatbags. "They will be arriving shortly. I have a clone setting up a Hiraiishin marker. From the information my clones have gathered, the sisters will be guarded by 3 vice admirals and 1 captain. I look forward to seeing how I stand up against these marines." Naruto felt a tug on his chakra. The seal was set. "We will speak again, for I must take my leave." "Good luck, Gaki. Show them the strength of the shinobi." With that, Naruto vanished in a flash of white. A smile had graced its way onto the ancient sage's lips. Docked at the port of Elneil was a marine battleship of colossal size. The ship was easily larger than any giant. The ship had 4 giant masts with 3 sails per mast that had been rolled up as the anchor dropped. At the front of the ship and on each side was a large triple-barreled gun. The ship had been selected due to the special cargo it would be carrying. The cargo was 2 young girls who had been sold at the price of 1 billion berry each, and in order to ensure the safe arrival of this priceless merchandise, 3 vice admirals and 1 captain had been assigned to the protection detail, along with 3 heavily armed battalions of 100 marines per battalion, totaling 300 able-bodied warriors. Stepping off the deck of the battleship was a man of giant proportions. He wore a variation of the marine uniform. His traditional white robe was customized with yellow colorings, red borders, adding more rich details to his collar. He also carried awarded medals on his left breast, signifying his important rank and status. He wore a traditional red bicorn hat with the marine symbol. Underneath that, he wore an orange shirt, simple loose pants and boots. He also wields a katana that fits his size, slung over his shoulder. This was Vice Admiral John Giant. The next marine to step of the ship was a man with a black mohawk and a mustache. He wore the standard marine uniform, consisting of a purple and white pinstripe suit with a coat draped over his shoulders. Underneath his coat lay a dark blue shirt and a light blue tie. He is of average height and very well built. He carried his weapon of choice, a katana, attached to his right hip. This was Vice Admiral Momanga. The third marine that came off the ship was a straight-shaped man with a long beard. His eyes were half closed. He wore a very long bearskin version of the standard marine uniform cap due to his head being abnormally long. He wore a standard marine's coat draped over his shoulders like a cape. Under it, and over a shirt left unbuttoned near the neck, he wore a water green jacket, with pale yellow rope-like ornaments on the chest, and matching pants. This was Vice Admiral Strawberry. The last of the high-ranking marines to step off the ship was another man who wore a veil across his mouth and what appeared to be a newsboy cap version of the standard marine uniform cap. The marine jacket had he draped over his shoulder only reached to his waist, and was much thinner than the standard, as well as much shorter, barely reaching his waist. This was the marine captain Shu. The 4 marines made their way onto dry land as their troops followed suit, circling around a moving cart with a cage on top. Inside the cage were 2 young girls. The first and most notable was an 8-year-old girl 4 feet in height with long black hair split into bangs and hazel cat-like eyes, dressed in a tattered black kimono. Held in the girl's arms was a much smaller figure, a 3-year-old girl with white hair, hazel cat-like eyes in a tattered white dress, who was shaking with fear. The Marines came to a stop as the royal army of Elneil approached their king at the front. The king was a young man of 18 years with short black hair and eyes. He was wearing long flowing royal robes that were colored gold and decorated with glistening gems, no doubt to show off his substantial wealth. His troops marched behind him, 20 in total. "Welcome, welcome Vice Admiral Momonga, Vice Admiral Strawberry, Vice Admiral John Giant and Captain Shu. I hope your journey was a pleasant one," spoke the young king as he greeted his guests. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Your Highness. Our trip was most pleasant. We ran a course of a few pirates, but they were quickly dealt with," spoke Vice Admiral Momonga as he shook hands with the young man before him. The king laughed with glee that their journey had been a safe one. Good, I'm glad you had a safe trip," exclaimed the king. The king turned to the cage and approached it, getting a better look at the two girls, a perverse looking forming in his eyes as he licked his lips, sending shivers up the girls' spines. "Yes, you two will make fine concubines when you come of age. Until then I will make sure you are trained properly." The king leered as he reached into the cage, but before he could go any further a flash of white caught his eyes. Turning to the source, he spotted a unique individual. The Marines followed the king's gaze. Standing 15 meters from the location was a man 6 feet in height with flowing white hair, horns on his head and the most peculiar-looking eyes. Naruto eyed them all with disgust as he focused his attention on the two girls and flashed a warm smile. Naruto began to release a small concentration of chakra directing towards the two girls, allowing its warmth to wash over them, wrapping around them like a blanket. "Don't worry, you'll be safe soon," Naruto smiled, then turned in a scowl as he eyed the Marines before him. Trash the lot of them. They believed in justice, yet they were selling off two innocent girls like they were furniture. His eyes narrowed as the giant of the group approached him. "Leave now by order of the Marines," shouted the giant man as he looked down at Naruto, but the eternal sage refused to move, simply looking up at the giant with a cocky smirk. This enraged the giant as he brought his right fist down towards Naruto, hitting the ground with a loud thud. A smirk formed on the giant's lips, only for the dust to settle. John's eyes widened as Naruto stood there unharmed, his right hand having caught the man's fist like it was nothing. "What?" roared the giant, shock written all over his face as he eyed the puny creature that had stopped his fist like it was nothing. "Get out of my way," Naruto's voice came out as a whisper, but it was heard by all. Chakra flooded Naruto's system, flowing into his arm as he tightened his grip on the man's right index finger, clenching hard enough to make John cry out in pain. Naruto then threw the man over his shoulder, sending the vice admiral sailing through the air. The giant roared in surprise as he sailed through the air, and landed on the hard ground with a heavy thud, making the earth shake on impact. Naruto ignored the downed marine and marched towards the rest. If this was the extent of the power of these Marines, Naruto felt he would be disappointed. He was expecting more. As Naruto marched towards his prey, a shadow encompassed his form. He looked up as the giant Marine appeared over him. "Die!" roared Vice Admiral John Giant, drawing his blade, bringing it down in an overhead swing. He swung his blade with such strength he summoned gale force winds. The massive blade descended down upon Naruto. The winds tore up the surrounding terrain, sending debris in every direction. The giant's muscles bulged as the metal gleamed under the sun. Naruto eyed the incoming blade before blurring out of sight as it hit the ground. The blade struck the earth, cleaving a deep trench. The ground shook violently beneath the force of the giant. The giant looked around confused, only to feel something on his right shoulder. Looking, he found Naruto on his right shoulder, holding out his right hand as a spiraling sphere of bright blue chakra formed. Rasengan, spiraling sphere. Naruto thrust the spiraling sphere into the right cheek of the giant. The sphere expanded in size as it sent the man flying through the air and crashing into the kingdom of Elneil. As the giant hit the ground, the entire kingdom shook once more, as if an earthquake was shaking apart the entire land. Naruto landed on the ground as the lowly grunts rushed towards him, lining up 5 meters from him. The Marines lifted their rifles, the barrels locked onto him as they prepared to fire. The Marines took aim and under the command of Vice Admiral Strawberry fired, unleashing hell upon the man who dared interfere in their justice. Naruto eyed the incoming projectiles with boredom. He pulled on his chakra, focusing on his Jishin element. It had been some time since he had flexed his own chakra. The spars with Suzuka and his slaughter of the Blue Whale pirates had certainly helped to get rid of the rust. He brought his right hand upwards, unleashing a magnetic force that sent the projectiles flying backwards, where they pierced through the flesh of dozens of Marines, allowing the coppery smell of blood to fill the air. He had made sure to release the repulse on an angle to avoid hitting the girls. He didn't want them getting hurt. They had suffered enough pain already. The Marines roared as they charged him head-on, swords drawn in an attempt to skewer the sage, a foolish attempt. Naruto's eyes glowed as he molded his chakra, transforming it into his earth nature. He brought his hands down onto the globe, releasing his chakra into the landscape. Doden. Meiso no Jutsu, earth release, burial technique. The landscape shook as ripples could be seen being emitted from Naruto's hands. The landscape beneath the Marines began to liquefy, turning to mud. The mud rose up into the air all around them, rising high, blocking out the sun. The Marines screamed in horror as the mud came crashing down like a tidal wave, pulling them deep beneath the earth, where the mud hardened, burying them alive. A cruel fate. Naruto could care less about how cruel it seemed to bury them alive. At this point he didn't care how cruel he was. A part of him supposed he had gained his new sadistic streak from Ibiki, Anko and various members of the Konoha torture and interrogation squad. Naruto picked up an incoming killer intent, and he took a single step back as the Vice Admiral with the mohawk appeared to his right, bringing his sword down. Naruto watched the metal glide down in front of him, striking the ground harmlessly. Naruto retaliated, his right fist coming into connection with the Vice Admiral's left cheek. On impact his knuckles formed an imprint, the ground shook and the man was sent flying backwards. Thanks to absorbing Kagaya and the Shinju, his physical strength and rose exponentially to unfathomable levels, to such extents he could go toe-to-toe with Kurama with just his punches. Momonga groaned as he struggled to his feet, pain coursing through his entire body. He hadn't expected that one blow to be so powerful. It felt as if a number of his ribs were broken from the impact with the ground. His jaw felt like it was cracked and his cheek was beginning to swell. Yet he got the feeling the mysterious stranger and held back. He dug his blade into the ground, using it to help him stand. He looked up as the intruder approached him. The way the stranger walked, it looked like he was an apex predator hunting his prey, and sadly he was that prey. Momonga climbed to his feet and charged. He wasn't going to be the prey to some upstart. Naruto watched the Vice Admiral charge. Naruto chuckled at the fruitless effort. Naruto lifted his right hand, catching the Marine's blade as it came down in an overhead swing. Naruto eyed the weak metal and applied pressure, snapping the blade in half. The Marine's eyes widened in shock at the action. Naruto's left fist planted itself in the Marine's stomach and on impact sent the man flying through the air, crashing right into the battleship, leaving a large hole. The entire ship shook from the impact as waves formed in the water. Naruto expanded his senses. The Marine was down. Naruto cracked his knuckles and turned to the Marine soldiers. He lifted a hand and beckoned them to come. The Marines roared as they drew their blades and rushed forth, a number staying back to arm the cannons and rifles, not that they would do them any good. Naruto rushed forth at a slow pace, no need to go all out. He ducked under a sword thrust and performed an uppercut to the Marine with his right palm, before his left elbow made contact with the middle of Marine's face, breaking his teeth and nose. Naruto's right fist nailed the next Marine in the chest. The powerful force of his punch sent the Marine skyrocketing into a dozen of his comrades, sending them all flying through the air, knocked out from the blow. The Marines were moving so pathetically slow. If he could deactivate his Rinne Sharingan he would, as he didn't need it to predict their movements. There was no point in shifting to the Byakugan either, as he would see them coming from all angles. Naruto danced between the Marines, easily avoiding their attacks. He leapt up into the air to avoid being skewered. Even if he was made of chakra, he still felt pain. In a way, as he battles against these Marines, he couldn't help but wonder if this is how Madara Uchiha felt when he clashed with the allied forces. Naruto landed on the ground, looking up, watching as the Marines charged. Naruto closed his eyes, tapping into the memories of someone who had once belonged to the Sarutobi Ichizoku clan. Kaden. Goen no Jutsu, fire release. Great flame technique. He inhaled molding fire nature chakra into his lungs before he exhaled. Flames came to life as they rushed towards the enemy, engulfing the air in front of him. The stream of fire sailed on, expanding in size as it got closer and closer. The giant stream of fire collided with a group of Marines, engulfing them in a glorious blaze, their screams echoing all around. Naruto inhaled again, this time dipping into a technique he retrieved from the memories of his old sensei Hitaki, Kakashi. Sweden, water release, water bullet. Naruto kneaded water chakra into his stomach before he expelled a stream of compressed water that sailed forth, hitting the blaze, putting the bodies out and allowing a thick blanket of steam to engulf the terrain. Using the steam to his advantage, his eyes shifted, giving life to the Byakugan, allowing him to see the remaining enemies who had been foolish enough to enter the steam cloud. Naruto's eyes locked onto his targets and he moved, taking action. Wind nature chakra came to life, engulfing his hands, turning them into deadly blades. He moved with silence through the cloud of steam, dancing around the Marines, his hands acting like blades, slashing and hacking through his foes. Their screams filled the steam as one by one he cut down his foes. Blood spilled into the air, turning the steam blood red. On the outside, the Marines waited patiently for the cloud of steam to disperse. As the steam finally died down, they saw their attackers surrounded by the corpses of their fallen comrades. Naruto turned to face them, only to hear a loud bang, the sound of a cannon going off. Naruto back-flipped as a cannonball struck the ground where he had been standing. He landed in a crouched position and looked up with burning fury, the Rinne Sharingan flaring up. He locked onto a group of 3 Marines, rearming the cannon they had used to fire upon him. The shinobi moved, picking up speed, becoming a blur as he appeared in front of the 3, his left fist cocked. Chakra flooded his system, flowing into his hand as he molded his explosion nature chakra. Bakuden. Jiraiken, explosion release. Landmine fist. His voice came out as a low whisper as his fist struck the cannon. His fist glowed, and the moment it made contact, a massive explosion came to life, engulfing everything and everyone in the vicinity. The Marines were torn apart by the explosion, leaving a clear pathway for Naruto to make his way towards the cage holding the 2 girls. A number of brave Marines charged in towards him, rifles and cutlass aimed to kill. Naruto eyed them with a cold expression. As he watched them close in, he could have sworn he heard a rasping cry. Chakra burst forth from his body as the wind whipped about, growing fierce in temperament. A large gust of wind came to life, blowing past the Marines, who came to a sudden halt. Futon. Nagi, wind release. Lull. His voice carried on the wind as blood sprayed out through the air as the Marines fell to pieces, their bodies having been torn apart by some sort of invisible blade. Naruto approached the bars of the cage and reached up with his right hand, pulling on his own earth and fire nature chakra, fusing them to form his lava nature. He touched one of the bars and it began to melt away. As it began to melt, Naruto's negative emotion sensing activated. He jumped back, narrowly avoiding the blade of Vice Admiral Strawberry, who had charged him from the right. The Vice Admiral was overcome with rage. The Vice Admiral had his twin blades drawn, holding them in a reverse grip as he faced the stranger who had dared to interfere in their endeavors. Strawberry rushed forth, giving a battle cry as he charged the unknown stranger. He swung his blades, lashing out at the man who ducked, bobbed and weaved around each blow with relative ease. This only infuriated the Vice Admiral further. He roared as he gave a thrust of his blades, only for the man to step to the right, a bored look on his face. Strawberry saw him pull his right fist back, and a smirk formed on the Vice Admiral's lips as his skin turned black thanks to his Busashoku haki. Naruto eyed the color of his opponent's flesh with a carefree expression. His fist moved through the air as he molded his explosion release nature chakra into the attack. Bakuden. Jiraiken. His fist struck the dead center of the man's chest and an explosion erupted with 3 times the force of the previous one. The explosion engulfed both Naruto and Vice Admiral Strawberry. A massive cloud of dust rose up into the air, blocking the 2 from view. As the dust settled, both were revealed to be standing. Strawberry stood there unmoving, his eyes wide and white, a horrified expression on his lips. The Vice Admiral's clothing was torn apart, his body horribly burnt and his swords destroyed. The Marine coughed up smoke before collapsed in the middle of a giant crater. He had thought his haki would protect him from the strange individual. He had been wrong. Naruto shook his right fist, his eyes narrowing. Surprisingly, the blow had hurt. It was only a slight pain, but enough to be noticed. He didn't know what the Vice Admiral had done, but he would have to investigate it later. Naruto brought his focus onto the remaining Marine captain. From behind the veil, Naruto could feel the sneer on the Marine's lips. The Marine charged forth, his left arm extending as his palm was aimed for Naruto's chest. Naruto's eyes picked up a strange energy signature coursing through the man's body as he charged. The sage raised his left arm to block the incoming palm, only for his eyes to widen as rust began to spread across his flesh down to his hand, causing it to rust away. Naruto blurred back, creating some distance between him and the captain. Naruto looked down at his left arm. From the elbow down was gone. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the flesh before turning to look at the man, feeling the man's cocky grin behind that damn veil. Naruto growled as his chakra erupted from his body in the shape of bright sapphire flames that tore up the ground. The blue-like flames of chakra engulfed his form before they flowed down into his arm. Chakra burst forth from the limbs, spiraling out into the air, taking the shape of an arm before it solidified, allowing the flesh to be born. Naruto flexed the new appendage. One of the advantages to being completely made of chakra was the high-speed regeneration it granted him. Shu's eyes widened at the sight of the stranger's arm regenerating from the strange blue flames that radiated from his body. Shu didn't know what this man was, but he could only call him a demon. He had never encountered a man with so many different abilities, from control over fire, earth, wind and water to super strength, generating explosions, and now regeneration. Just what kind of devil fruit or fruits had this man consumed? Shu was brought out of his thoughts as the stranger appeared before him, the stranger's right fist striking him hard on the head, knocking him to the ground, allowing the darkness to consume him. Naruto dusted his hands off as he turned to face the remaining Marines, who were shaking at this point. The man, no, this demon before them, had taken out 3 vice admirals and a captain with barely any effort. This same man had decimated their forces without breaking a sweat. What made this man even more of a monster was that he had regenerated his arm from the effects of Captain Shu's Akuma no Mi. What could they possibly do to this stranger in white? Naruto smirked. At least they had the brains to give up. Naruto approached the cage only for the sound of a flintlock being fired to fill the void. He turned as a projectile flew past him, narrowly missing the girls. Standing before him was the Elneil King, a flintlock pistol in hand, glaring towards him. The glare was supposed to be intimidating, but Naruto found it quite amusing. "How dare you? Those girls are mine. I demand you hand them over," demanded the king as he stomped the ground like a little brat. Naruto turned his focus to the roiled trash before him, taking a step forth. "What gives you the right to enslave the innocent?" roared the sage, his anger growing. The king sneered at the gutter trash before him. "You insolent dog. I am a king, the first can do as I please. I am above the rules of this world." The royal guard tensed as Naruto approached the king, a dark shadow looming over him. He would send this royal dog to his grave. The guards attempted to move only to find themselves frozen in place by fear as a powerful murderous intent came crashing down upon them. Naruto looked towards them, his eyes glowing bright red, daring them to move. Naruto approached the young king, raising his right hand and grabbed the boy by his face, lifting him up into the air. The boy struggled and struck at him with the pistol, but Naruto ignored it. The boy's blows barely tickled. Naruto focused on his lava nature chakra, letting it bubble to the surface. Screams filled the air as molten lava flowed down onto the boy, encompassing his form, melting away his body, dissolving him into a puddle. Naruto released what remained of the king, his crown. He then brought his foot down, crushing the golden crown as if it was garbage. He turned on his heels and approached the girls, his hands grasping the bars and melting the metal. With Kuroka could only shake in fear as she clutched her little sister Sharon. She and her sister had been sold once again. Kuroka had attempted to escape their previous master using her abilities to kill him. She and her sister had enjoyed freedom for 3 days before they had been captured by the Marines. Now they were being handed to their new master, the King of Elneil. She had tried many times to escape but had been punished each time by her previous masters. She could still feel the phantom pains from those torturous sessions even now. She had done all she could to protect her sister, even training her devil fruit powers, but that was all for naught, as each time she escaped with her sister they were captured and sold to a new master. This time they were being guarded by 3 vice admirals and a captain. She had hoped that these Marines would have the heart to let them go, but they were just as cruel, refusing to acknowledge them as human beings. Kuroka shivered as she watched the king look over her. She felt so dirty as his eyes looked at her with such perversion. She wished she could just curl up into a ball and forget all about it, but she needed to be strong for her sister. Sharon was still so young and was not yet prepared for what was to come. Kuroka wanted to do all she could to protect her younger sister. Kuroka had thought all hope was lost for her and her sister as the king reached out towards them, but that's when he arrived, a stranger in white with strange horns growing from his forehead. The man looked like some sort of heavenly demon. The stranger addressed her and her sister directly. "Don't worry, you'll be safe soon." She didn't know why, but the warmth that washed over her as he spoke made her feel safe, made her believe his words. It had been so long since she had felt safe and secure. Kuroka felt tears begin to swell as she watched her savior be crushed beneath the weight of the giant's fist. She quickly wiped her growing tears. When her savior had survived, the fact that the man was alive filled her with great joy. The stranger had caught the giant's fist as if it weighed nothing more than a feather. The stranger had then tossed the giant like he was nothing, as if he was a mere insect. She had seen the same man dodge the Vice Admiral giant's sword before he thrust some strange glowing sphere into the giant's face, putting him down. Kuroka watched as the stranger proceeded to tear the Marines apart. He had raised a hand, the effect sending their projectiles flying back at them. The projectiles cut down their owners without remorse. She couldn't tear herself away as she watched this god before her slaughter these horrible like cattle. Their firearms useless against him. The man placed his hands on the ground, appearing to manipulate the very earth itself to bury the Marines alive. His physical strength had decimated all who stood before him. He had wiped Vice Admiral Momonga out with 2 vicious blows, the first rattling the Marine while the second sent him flying into his own ship, leaving a large hole in its side. Kuroka could not believe just what she was seeing, all the while keeping her little sister's eyes covered so not to expose her to such brutality and death. The white-haired man showed more of his power, wielding the power of fire as if it was a mere toy. He had exhaled a stream of fire that torched those who stood in his path. This same man continued by unleashing a stream of water, causing steam to fill the battlefield. The cloud of steam hid the stranger from view, and all that was heard were the screams of the Marines as the stranger tore them apart. The man had narrowly avoided being struck by cannonball before he had moved with speed that she could only call impossible. She had barely seen the stranger move as he became an untraceable blur which proceeded to decimate the Marines, engulfing them in an explosion, unlike anything she had ever seen. As he approached her cage, she felt hope rise. Her eyes widened as she caught sight of the Marines charging towards him. "Watch out." She attempted to cry, but words' voice came out as a raspy gasp. It had been so long since she had been allowed to speak, she barely recognized the sound of her own voice. Kuroka could only watch her eyes shaking as the Marines grew closer and closer. A gust of wind blew past, causing her hair to flutter, and in that instant, the Marines were torn apart as if cut by an invisible blade. He had smiled at her and she felt her heart grow as he continued to her cage. The sight of her savior made her heart beat wildly in her chest, a small blush forming on her cheeks as she realized just how handsome he was. His eyes, they made her stomach spin, they were so warm. To her this man was not human, nor was a demon or even the devil. He was a god in human form who had answered her prayers. Annoyance flickered in her cat-like hues as Vice Admiral Strawberry attempted to stop the god in human form. Her undivided attention was focused on the handsome stranger as he danced with grace around Strawberry's attack before his fist struck and another explosion larger than the last came to life, leaving a giant crater and the Vice Admiral down for the count. Worry grew as the Marine Captain Shu attacked. Kuroka gasped, a hand covering her mouth as she watched in horror as her savior's arm dissolved into nothing, but that's when she saw tongues of blue flames coming to life. The tongues of flames moved to his arm, regrowing it to the point it looked as if it had never been removed. The man had attacked, knocking Captain Shu out with a single blow, but again as he went to rescue them he was stopped, this time by the king. Her eyes widened in their sockets as she heard the king's screams as he was melted by what looked like molten rock. This man was truly some god come to save her and her sister, all the while smite their captives, delivering righteous vengeance. As he approached them for the final time he grasped the bars, causing them to melt away. Back with Naruto. Naruto smiled at the young girl in the cage as she stared back at him. her mouth slightly open, no doubt in shock of what he had done. He chuckled softly as held out his right hand for the girl to take. "Come, you'll be safe. I will take you and your sister away from here where you won't ever have to be afraid again. I promise." His voice was so warm that Kurama reached out, grabbing his hand. The moment she did, she felt a warmth like nothing she had ever experienced before filling her veins. As she attempted to stand, her legs gave out and she fell against him. Naruto smiled gently as he picked the girl up in his arms, holding her bridal style, her sister Sharon clutching tightly to her. Kurama could only blush at the close contact. She soon shivered when she noticed the Marines and the royal guard of Elneil. Naruto felt the girl shiver in his arms as she looked at the remaining soldiers. Naruto eyed them, flaring his intent, freezing them in place. He tugged on his chakra, activating a retribution marker before he vanished in a flash of white. Kurama clutched her savior before everything became a blur, the world spinning around her. Before she knew it, she was in the middle of a strange village surrounded by massive walls and mountainous terrain. Her feet touched the ground and she wobbled. She felt her stomach twisted and turned, she felt so sick. Sharon appeared to be worse off as she had collapsed to her knees and gone pale. Sharon looked like she would faint at any moment. Naruto crouched beside the younger sister, his right hand glowing green as he placed it on her back. Naruto concentrated, using the memories he had gained from Sakura to send his chakra into her body to help relieve the discomfort of the effect of the retribution. First-timers often felt sick. Sharon sighed in content as her skin regained its color. She felt better in a matter of seconds. She gave her savior a weak smile. Perhaps it was time for introductions. The sage took a step back and gave a giant foxy grin. "Forgive me for being so rude. I am Uzumaki, Naruto, and welcome to my home, Uzushiogakure no Sato," bellowed Naruto as he raised his arms to the sky, giving a dramatic pose, only to be suddenly tackled from behind by a black blur. Naruto hit the ground with a loud thud. On top of him was his student Suzuka. "Sensei, I was so worried when I couldn't find you," the young girl sniffed as she gazed down at her teacher. "I thought you had left us." Her voice began to break, tears forming at the edges of her eyes. She had been so afraid that her sensei had abandoned her. The sight of his student beginning to cry pulled on Naruto's heartstrings. He sat up, placing a hand on her head, gently patted her, giving her one of his heart-warming smiles. "Gomen Suzuka-chan, I didn't mean to scare you, I would never leave you." Naruto stood up, helping Suzuka to her feet. He gave the girl a small hug to help reassure her that he would never leave. "Now please allow me to introduce our new friends." Naruto turned towards the two sisters, beckoning them forward, watching in amusement as Sharon hid behind her sister, shyly poking out from behind Kurama's right leg. "Meet Kurama and Sharon." The older sister turned to him, surprised that he had known her name. She cleared her throat and spoke in a raspy tone. "How did you know our names?" Naruto frowned slightly. It sounded as if she hadn't used her voice in years. He approached her, lifting a hand to her throat, chakra beginning to form as a green glow encased the area. He went to work healing her vocal cords, answering her question as he did. "I had a clone inform me of your predicament and I wanted to help." The girl looked at him in confusion. "See, clone?" she asked, her voice having lost its raspy tone. Naruto smirked as in a puff of smoke appeared a cage bunchen. "Yup, clone. Now, as I said before, welcome to my home. You are welcome to stay as long as you like. Living arrangements will be provided for you and your sister, along with necessities such as cloths, food and water." Kurama held onto her little sister and began to look around the strange village. She could see children walking around the village laughing and playing with carbon copies of her savior. As she looked around, confusion formed in her hues. She couldn't see any adults besides the man who called himself Naruto. Everyone else seemed to be under the age of 12 with the exception of Suzuka. Naruto seemed to notice her confusion. "As you've noticed, I am the only adult. This village used to be populated many years ago before its destruction. Now it has been rebuilt as a safe haven. Many of the children here I rescued last year from a slave trader. Suzuka-chan here is one of them, and she just happens to be my prized student," said girl, blushed at the compliment, looking down at her feet to hide her rosy red cheeks. Naruto took note of her embarrassment and gave a soft laugh, causing the girl to pout cutely at him. He then turned his focus back to the two sisters. "Suzuka-chan will give you the tour. If you have any questions, feel free to ask her, Yane." His student gaped. She hadn't agreed to that. Naruto saluted them before he vanished in a white blur, narrowly avoiding being tackled by his student again. "Sensei!" screamed an angry Suzuka as her sensei vanished from sight, Naruto's laughter echoing throughout the village. 5 days had come to pass since Naruto's the attack on the kingdom of Elneil, and the news had finally reached the marine headquarters at Marineford. The royal family of Elneil had gone into an uproar over what had happened, and there was chaos amongst the lower ranks of the Marines at the defeat of 4 ranking officers. It was with that Fleet Admiral Sengoku had called an emergency meeting requesting the audience of all his trusted admirals, vice admirals, strategists and advisors, demanding them return to Marineford as soon as possible. Fleet Admiral Sengoku marched down the hallways of Marineford heading towards the meeting room he had set up. He had been informed that the last of his advisors had arrived just moments ago. Sengoku gritted his teeth as he stomped down the halls. The Gorosei were not impressed with what had been allowed to happen, and they were demanding blood. Sengoku forced the meeting doors open, finding 7 of his trusted Marines seated around the table. The first was the great tactician, great staff officer, Tsuru, a thin elderly woman with gray hair tied in a bun. Next were the 3 admirals of the golden age of piracy: Borsellino, Kizaru, Yellow Monkey, Sakazuki, Akainu, Red Dog, and Kuzan, Iokiji, Blue Pheasant. The 3 were followed suit by 4 of his high-ranking vice admirals. The first, Monkey D. Garp, a tall, tanned, broad-chested, muscular old man, a man known as the hero of the Marines. Garp was followed by Momoshagi, a young slender woman with long curled black hair, a Marine officer who had been considered as a candidate for the position of admiral numerous times. Last was Vice Admiral Isho, or by his alias Fujitora, Wisteria Tiger, a blind man with short dark hair who, like Vice Admiral Momoshagi, was once a candidate for the position of admiral. Sengoku moved to the head of the table, taking a seat, turning to direct his loyal Marines. "I thank you for coming at such short notice. My apologies for any inconvenience it may have caused." He bowed his head as a young woman passed around the room pouring tea for the occupants before she retreated. Tsuru lifted the cup towards her lips, taking a small sip from it as she turned to address her longtime friend and comrade. "From your tone it sounded like an urgent matter, so we all came as quickly as we could," spoke the elderly woman as she sat her cup down and folded her hands over, resting them on the table. Sengoku sighed as he turned in his chair, lifting a remote. Sengoku pressed a button and a screen came rolling down one of the walls as the lights turned themselves off. The Fleet Admiral pressed another button and the screen turned itself on, showing the image of the man who had attacked his Marines at Elneil. A Den Mushi being used to project the image from the middle of the table. 5 days ago this individual attacked a company of Marines who arrived at Elneil to drop off high-valued merchandise the newly crowned king had bought. A number of Marines who remained stationed on the battleship Rosalia managed to acquire footage by surveillance Den Mushi. With another click of a button the screen switched to show the 2 girls who were to be sold to the king. The merchandise: 2 slave girls, Kuroka and her sister Sharon, ages 8 and 3, were to be the future concubines of the young king of Elneil. Spoke the Fleet Admiral, showing no outward reaction as he spoke about slavery. The room tensed as Garp and Tsuru took sneak peeks towards the blind Vice Admiral codenamed Fujitora, who seemed to be visibly shaking. The 2 Vice Admirals were well aware of the blind Marine's disdain for absolute justice, and was quite appalled when it came to matters of slavery. Sengoku cleared his threat to regain everyone's attention as he went to another slide revealing photos of the 4 Marines tasked with delivering the girls. Vice Admirals Strawberry, John Giant and Momonga along with Captain Shu had been given the task of escorting the merchandise to Elneil. Upon their arrival they were attacked. With a click the screen brought back the white-haired strainer. From the reports, Vice Admiral John Giant instructed the man to leave, but when he did not the Vice Admiral attacked in order to remove him. The stranger displayed physical strength capable of catching Vice Admiral John Giant's fist and toss him like a rag doll. In a display of speed the same man was able to avoid the Vice Admiral's blade and appear on his shoulder, forming some sort of blue sphere. With another touch of a button the screen changed, revealing the man standing atop the Vice Admiral's shoulder holding a blue sphere in his right hand. The strange sphere did extensive damage to the right side of the Vice Admiral's face. Dr. Vegapunk, through the use of experimental surgery, was able to heal the damage. With a click of a button the screen switched to show Vice Admiral John Giant lying in bed with bandages wrapped around his face. With the fall of Vice Admiral John Giant, Vice Admiral Strawberry ordered his men to line up and fire upon the intruder. In doing so, a new ability was revealed. The intruder, through means unknown, was able to deflect the projectiles, repelling them back out at the battalion, cutting down Strawberry's forces. Sengoku flicked to a small video that had been recorded showing what had happened, the stranger raising a hand and the projectiles being repelled back towards the Marines. The Marines proceeded to charge the intruder head-on, however the intruder retaliated by burying them alive. Buried them alive? Just in what manner did he achieve this? Inquired Suru as she turned to face Sengoku, many of her comrades doing the same. Sengoku pressed the button, switching to another video, this one of the intruder placing his hands on the earth where the terrain turned to mud, rising up to bury the Marines. The intruder was able to manipulate the terrain, turning it to mud where he used it to consume a small battalion. Once the battalion had been completely buried, the mud hardened over. Their bodies have been retrieved, answered the fleet admiral as he moved on to the next scene, this one revealing Vice Admiral Momonga laying in hospital. His entire body was one big cast. Vice Admiral Momonga retaliated, attacking the intruder, but the intruder was able to avoid Momonga's blade and proceeded to deliver a punch with enough force behind it to break 8 of Momonga's ribs. Momonga himself has stated that as he attempted to rise, he felt as if every movement would be his end. As he worked through the pain to attack the intruder, he was struck again. Momonga was struck with enough force to launch him into the battleship Rosalia. The force of the blow broke 90% of the Vice Admiral's bones, as well as causing tremendous internal damage. It is only thanks to the efforts of Dr. Vegapunk, Momonga is still alive. With a press of a button, the image shifted to a video of the intruder taking on a group of Marines in unarmed combat, single-handedly taking them down one by one. This intruder has exceptional skills in unarmed combat, as seen here, where he fought a number of Marines, defeating them effortlessly. The next image showed the man breathing in before expelling a large stream of flames from his lips, the flames colliding with a squad of Marines, burning them alive. Suru looked away at the scene, unable to watch. Garp gritted his teeth, clenching his fists in anger over the loss of lives, while Vice Admiral Momoshage shed a tear for their deaths. As seen here, the man has a unique and diverse range of abilities. Not only is he armed with enhanced physical strength, speed and the talent to manipulate the earth, this man has the ability to breathe fire through what means we do not know, as no accelerate were found on the bodies. Sengoku moved to the next screen, this time one where the intruder was expelling a large stream of water, putting out the flames to create a blanket of steam. To add to this laundry list of skills, he can also generate a large amount of water. However, the men that were collected from inside that steam mist were killed by some sort of sharp blade, but as you can see, the man carries no weapon with him. We have a hypothesis that will be covered in a moment. With a click of a button, it went straight to the next video, the man avoiding a cannonball before charging forth, his fist making contact with the cannon it had been fired from, followed by an enormous explosion. The intruder showed the ability to generate some sort of explosive punch. This was again seen in his battle against Vice Admiral Strawberry. As you can see, the explosive force generated was enough to wipe out an entire battalion of Marines. Out of the 100 Marines attached to the battalion, the bodies of 38 were recovered, 53 are unaccounted for, and the remaining 9 were lucky enough to not be caught in the explosion. Sengoku moved to the next scene. A group of Marines attempted to stop the intruder from getting closer to the cage, but they were taken down as well. The scene showed the Marines charging in before a gust of wind erupted from the intruder. Once the wind had died down, the Marines were torn apart as if they had been sliced by an invisible blade. Through careful analyze, Dr. Vegapunk believes this man can control the wind, turning it into sharp blades. It is through this method we believe he was able to eliminate the Marines caught in his blanket of steam. The screen switched to Vice Admiral Strawberry's clash with the intruder. The intruder continues to show his skill as he effortlessly avoided Vice Admiral Strawberry's assault before retaliating, causing the Vice Admiral to use his Busashoku Haki. The screen moved to show the Vice Admiral Strawberry's defense. However, it was proven the Vice Admiral's Busashoku Haki was unable to stop the intruder, as with a single punch the intruder generated an explosive force with 3 times the strength of his last. The video turned to an image of Vice Admiral Strawberry on a hospital bed wrapped in bandages from head to toe. The Vice Admiral received severe third-degree burns to 93% of his body and 70% of his bones were broken. He is currently stable, but we do not know when he will awake. The next video showed Captain Shu moving to attack. We had high hopes for Captain Shu, but as you will see, even his abilities were useless against this intruder. The video revealed Captain Shu dissolving the intruder's left arm only for the man to regenerate it. Vice Admiral Garp rose to his feet, slamming a hand on the table. Impossible. He was well aware of Captain Shu's devil fruit powers, but to be able to regenerate like this, the man was truly a monster. Yes, as you can see, the intruder showed the ability to regenerate his own limb. He then proceeded to knock Captain Shu out with a single blow. This leads us to believe the individual possesses high-speed regeneration. As to what his limits are, we do not know. The Fleet Admiral sighed as he leant back in his chair, moving to the final set of clips. The intruder, as he attempted to free the merchandise, was attacked by the young king, who sadly is no longer among us. The video revealed the idiocy of the young king as he attacked the intruder. The intruder lifted the king off the ground by his face and proceeded to melt him through what looked like molten rock. Sakazuki's eyes widened at this. That looks like my Magu Magu no Mi. The admiral's haki flared to match his growing temper, only to be silenced by Sengoku. Enough! Roared the fleet admiral, his haki coming crashing down upon Sakazuki. The admiral grumbled as he reined his haki in, Sengoku doing the same. The fleet admiral turned to face his council. The royal family of Elneil is most upset. Not only have they lost their new crowned king, but they have lost 2 billion berry in merchandise. They are demanding justice in the form of this man's head or the government to reimburse them for their loss. The Gorosei is demanding blood for this travesty against noble blood, but also the disgrace that has been brought to the Marines with the defeat of 4 of our operatives. Sengoku interlocked his hands, his elbows resting on the table as he leaned forward, as such a bounty has been issued towards this man. With a click of a button, the intruder's photo appeared on screen. The Gorosei are calling him the Rubiniru no Oni, demon of Elneil, and have issued a bounty of 1 billion berry. The highest bounty ever to be released, declared Sengoku as the amount appeared beneath the Ona's wanted poster. Chatter erupted amongst the high-ranking Marines. This was the 3rd occasion where the world government had issued such a high bounty. The first was when they released a bounty of 800 million berry on Gold D. Roger. The second time this had happened was when a 750 million bounty was placed upon Edward Newgate Whitebeard. Are you sure it is wise to mark this man with such a bounty? Never in our history has a man ever been marked with a bounty reaching a billion berry. Not even Gold D. Roger warranted such a bounty. Should we even be thinking of releasing this to the public? Think of the uproar it would cause. This man is an unknown appearing from nowhere with powers unheard of. The power this man has could very well cause a stir between the Shichibukai and the Yonko. I do not wish to think what could happen if this Oni and Whitebeard were to meet, commented Great Staff Officer Suru. The elderly woman was looking up at the poster. She had many concerns regarding this new individual that has arisen. I remember the battles between Kinjishi no Shiki and Kaikoku o Gold D. Roger. They were stories of legend. When they clashed, they remodeled landscapes. Gold D. Roger was a menace like no other, conquering the Grand Line and numerous countries. The Pirate King escaped the grasp of Vice Admiral Garp numerous times. I'm sure that, like me, you remember their battles clearly. I was witness to several clashes between Monkey D. Garp and Gold D. Roger, and even now I can still feel the slivers of fear that ran through my body just thinking about it. The elderly woman hugged herself, her body shivering as she remembered when she first witnessed the great strength of the legendary Pirate King. Suru calmed her nerves, pushing the memory away. No matter how much she wanted to keep them buried, the memories always seemed to find their way to the surface. Suru was normally a fearless woman, who had jumped headfirst into danger, but just remember, those 2 individuals could make her tremble with fear. Gold D. Roger and Kinjishi Shiki were not your ordinary humans. The same could be said about Garp. All 3 were monsters. If I might interject, Vice Admiral Suru, Vice Admiral Fujitora's voice echoed through the meeting hall, drawing in the attention of his fellow Marines. The Vice Admiral Isho had turned in Suru's direction, having picked up from where her voice was coming from. He took her silence as confirmation to speak. I agree with Suru in regards to the matter at hand. This Rubiniru no Oni, as we are calling him, seems to be an extremely dangerous individual. A man with such power does not just pop out from nowhere. Where has he been up until now? How did he get such power? What enables him to use the abilities he has shown? More importantly, who trained him? And are there others like him? His abilities are not natural. There is no devil fruits on record capable of such feats, nor from our research has one ever be crafted by the hands of man. Until we have the answers to these questions, I strongly advise this be kept between us. Releasing this information to the public at large could be disastrous," commented Fujitora, his fingers interlocking together, his elbows resting on the table, his chin sitting atop his extremities. Admiral Sakazuki sneered at the vice admiral. The magma user slammed a hand down on the table, causing cracks to form from the point of impact. He rose to his feet, his marine cape billowing behind him due to the effect of his haki being released. This man is a threat. His name should be spread like wildfire, not hidden away due to our cowardice. Sakazuki roared his answer as he glared daggers at Isho. He never agreed with the man's ideas of justice, as for him there was only one justice, absolute justice. This Oni who would sully the idea of absolute justice deserves nothing but a slow and agonizing death. Fujitora's muscles tensed as he turned to the sound of Sakazuki's voice. What an arrogant pig. He always hated the man with his ideal absolute justice. To him, absolute justice was corrupt, an excuse for the Marines to do as they pleased. Vice Admiral Suru stood up, flaring her own haki towards Sakazuki. This in turn caused the other Marines to begin flexing their power. Sengoku slammed his fists down on the table, drawing in everyone's attention. Enough. The decision has already been made. Alert every Marine base along not only the Grand Line but the Red Line, all the Blues, the Com Belt. Alert everyone. This man is exceedingly dangerous and powerful, perhaps even stronger than Whitebeard. I am issuing an order that only admirals and above, with the exceptions of Vice Admirals Isho and Monkey D. Garp, are to confront this menace. You are not to hold back. Use any means necessary to bring this monstrosity down. Sengoku cleared his throat, deciding to move things along. Next matter of business. The girls who escaped Kuroka and Sharon, no last names, have been issued with a bounty and a capture on site order. The oldest, Kuroka, has been issued with a bounty of 150 million berry. The younger sister Sharon a bounty of 80 million for a total worth of 230 million berry. As he spoke, he could feel the disapproving gaze of 4 of his Marines. He was looking at the bigger picture here. The girls could be connected to the Rubiniru no Oni and may be aware of his whereabouts. They needed to capture the Rubiniru no Oni as soon as possible to bring him to justice. Once they had him, they would perform a public execution. This would show the world the Marines would not stand by at the death of a world noble. It didn't help he was also being pressured for the man's capture by the Elneil royal family and the Gorosei. With a sigh, Sengoku addressed the council. Meeting adjourned. With their business concluded, Sengoku quickly rose to his feet and walked out of the meeting room, slamming the doors behind him. He had much to do. Uzushiogakure. Naruto sneezed as he walked through the village of Uzushiogakure. He looked around, lifting an eyebrow. Is someone talking about me? Wondered the sage. He shook his head and continued on through the village. 5 days had passed since he had rescued the Neko sisters, a cute little nickname he had made for them. When he had called the girls that in front of them, Sharon seemed to squirm in a cute little manner, as if she was embarrassed but happy at the same time. As for Kuroka, she merely gave a hearty laugh. It was nice to know that she could laugh after what she had gone through. Naruto clenched a fist, remembering what he had learned from the eldest sister. He had come to learn that her back was horribly scarred from all the punishments she had been given. This only fueled his anger towards the world government and its nobles. Learning what had been done had only fueled his desire to end the world government. He felt no remorse for what he had done to the Elneil king nor the Marines. The Marines of this world would have gladly allowed Kuroka's abuse to continue, and it sickened him. Naruto took a calming breath, drawing in nature chakra from his surroundings, allowing it to flood through his veins, soothing his anger. Once he was calmed, he dispersed the nature chakra at his feet across the dirt-filled street, causing grass to grow and flowers of all shapes and colors to bloom. The Azukage shut his eyes, expanding his senses. He wanted to check up on the Neko sisters to see how they were adjusting since their last conversation 2 days ago. He had checked up on the sisters before leaving them in the capable hands of Nibi no Bakaneko Matabi, two-tailed monster cat Matabi. When he had introduced them to the giant feline, she had proceeded to wrap them up in her tails and proceeded to hug them to death. It had been quite amusing, to say the least. Naruto's chakra pulsed from his body, expanding over the village. He could feel the signatures of everyone in the village flare to life, chakra and non-chakra users. He could feel their life force flood the streets of Uzushiogakure. The emotions each one of them felt washed over him like a tidal wave. A large smile that threatened to split his face in two began to form. He could feel the influx of positive emotions they were brimming with, and it filled him with joy as he felt their love. His sensory abilities picked up the matching signatures belonging to Kuroka and Sharon. Oddly enough, the two girls seemed to have already unlocked their chakra network. Sharon, while her reserves were small, they were still larger than expected for someone her age. Then there was Kuroka, who was already showing signs of low Chunin level reserves. She almost reminded him of a Jinchuriki. When he asked the girl about this, she had simply gave him a confused look, unaware that she was even using chakra. He had yet to find out why the two girls had access to chakra, but he would continue to investigate. Naruto's eyes shot open, locking onto a nearby Hiraishin marker, and vanished in a blur of white. The scene Naruto came to caused him to awe at how adorable it was. There in front of him at the Nibi shrine was Matabi, currently the size of a horse, with her tails wrapped around a sleeping Sharon who was snuggled up to the two-tailed feline. The white-haired girl had the most adorable expression as she held tightly to the feline's fur. He had expected Matabi to take the girls in, but not to this extent. He thought she would be something of a sister figure, but it seemed she had taken on the role as the little girl's mother. As he admired the scene, a cute giggle brought him back into the real world. He turned to the source, finding young Kuroka sitting on a rock. She was wearing a brand new black kimono with matching sash, white tabi and waraji. The 8-year-old jumped down from the rock, her hair having been tied in a bun. She approached her savior, a small smile in place. As she got closer, the sage noticed the bags that had started to form under her eyes. He decided not to comment on it, for now. Hi Kami-sama Nien, spoke the girl, adding a strange verbal tick to the end of her sentence. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Ever since he had rescued the girl, she had taken to end her sentences with Nien. Perhaps it was some sort of verbal tick to deal with what had happened to her. Then there was her calling him Kami-sama. Naruto will be fine, Kuroka-chan, replied the sage. The last thing he wanted was for people to start calling him a god. He didn't need a god complex like Madara or Nagato. Technically, he supposed he was kind of a god, having absorbed the Shinju and Kagaya. Then there was his immortality, plus he was a walking talking mass of chakra. But if he started to think like that, he would start believing it, and he wanted to retain his humanity. The young Neko shook her head. Nope, Kami-sama is Kami-sama, replied the girl, getting a groan from the sage, who missed the mischievous little smile that appeared on her lips for a split second. What can I do for you, Kami-sama? Asked the raven-haired girl as she placed her hands behind her back, looking up at her savior. I wanted to check in and see how we and your sister were adjusting since our last meeting. We are doing fine. Matabi-sama has been wonderful to us. Nien. Shiro-chan has taken to her. She accepted Matabi-sama as her mother, answered the girl. Naruto smiled at her little verbal tick. Strangely, it reminded him of his old one, Databio, but he had lost it when he had absorbed the collective memories of the shinobi nations. It soothes my heart knowing you are adjusting to your new surroundings. I had never expected Matabi to form such a bond, but I suppose it may be because she misses her old Jinchuriki ni, Yugito, commented the sage as he turned to look at the two-tailed cat. Jinchuriki? Ni, Yugito? Asked Kuroka with a confused expression. Naruto face palmed. That was right, she didn't know about his nor Matabi's past. A Jinchuriki is a term used for someone who had a biju sealed inside of them, like Matabi-chan here. She used to be sealed inside of a young woman by the name of Ni, Yugito, a strong-willed and powerful kunoichi. Sadly, she passed away many years ago. Matabi had formed a strong bond with Yugito, so she was felt deep sorrow at the loss of her friend, answered the sage, getting a sorrowful look from the young girl, who turned her attention to the demon cat. I hope Shiro-chan will heal Matabi-sama like she is helping to heal my Shiro-chan Nien. Kuroka approached the sleeping felines, kneeling down to stroke her sister's hair. The white-haired girl snuggled deeper into Matabi, her smile growing in size. Naruto watched the exchange, his eyes catching the sight of a pair of white cat ears popping out from Sharon's hair before two white cattails grew from her tailbone. Kuroka merely chuckled. When Shiro-chan is happy, she loses control over her powers, explained the black Neko as she grew her own pair of ears and tails, with the exception that hers were black. With their powers activated, Naruto's eyes widened in shock. The two were subconsciously drawing in nature chakra. As the nature chakra flowed through their veins, he noticed a clear difference in the way he used it and the way they used it. When he drew in nature chakra, he blended it with his own massive chakra reserves. From what he was seeing, they were taking in nature chakra, and instead of infusing it with their chakra, it flowed throughout their body as if it had its own network. As the nature chakra bled into their system, small strands of it would flow into their chakra reserves, slowly expanding their coils, making them grow. That explained everything. The girls were using nature chakra and as a result caused their coils to expand, allowing their chakra network to grow. Kuroka turned to her savior. Notice his expression. "What's wrong, Kami-sama?" A smirk formed on the sage's lips as he shut his eyes, drawing in the surrounding nature chakra. He reached out, grabbing hold, and drew it into his body, allowing it to mix with his reserves. His chakra erupted from within, washing over the entire village, allowing every last one of the citizens of Uzu to feel their leader's warmth. Kuroka's eyes widened as she sensed a familiar energy course through her savior, the same energy she drew into her own body when she used her devil fruit abilities. You can use it too," exclaimed the cat girl, her tails flicking about in excitement. As her savior opened his eyes, Kuroka felt mesmerized. His strange eyes were glowing with an untold power. Around his eyes, a burnt orange pigmentation had formed. His iris had bled out from black, turning a burnt orange. The 9 red tomos were spinning wildly. The black rings had shifted, turning bright red. Burnt orange lines had formed, descending from the lower part of his eyes down to his cheekbones to complete the look. "Senin Modo, Sage Mode," whispered the sage. When he had reformed the first time he used Sage Mode, he had discovered he no longer gained the toad-like eyes. Instead, his Sage Mode had taken on an entirely new appearance. Kuroka approached her savior, a hand reaching out to touch his strange markings. Her eyes focused intently. She could feel the power he was releasing. It was unlike anything she ever experienced. When she first met him, she knew he was powerful, she could sense it, but now his power had increased tenfold and was still growing to a point she could no longer sense it. Her savior truly was a god. A yawn caught the attention of the 2 senjutsu users, forcing them to turn towards the sleeping Sharon, who was beginning to stir. Sharon yawned, stretching her arms and tails, using her hands to rub the sleep from her eyes in a cat-like manner, getting twin ahs from Kuroka and Naruto. The little girl hadn't noticed the two as she gently shook Matabi. "Tabi Okawa-sama," spoke the little girl, earning a smile from the sage. Matabi awoke when she heard Sharon call her name. She awoke with a mighty yawn and turned to the little girl, who she had taken in as she was her own kitten. She used her tails to stroke Sharon's right cheek affectionately. "I see you've certainly taken to the role as Mother Matabi-chan." The 2-tailed feline turned her head, finding Naruto standing across from her, a foxy smile on his lips. "Ah, Naruto-kun, what brings you by?" asked the feline as if pretending he had never said anything, getting a chuckle from the sage. "I decided to check up on Sharon-chan and Kuroka-chan, but I can see you have things under control." Naruto let the nature chakra in his body flow into the ground, causing the area around the shrine to bloom, getting a squeal of delight from the white-haired Neko. "Kuroka-chan and Sharon-chan have been absolute dears. I thank you for bringing them to me." Matabi stood up, stretching her back as Sharon ran over to her sister, giving the raven-haired girl a hug, which was happily reciprocated. "Yes, well, I thought you would be suited to aid in their adjustments. Kurama can be rather grumpy. Sun is not suited for 2 girls. Saiken is far too shy and reserved. Isobu and Yuki are too busy, and don't get me started on Shukaku. He might be great with kids, but I don't trust him not to raise a couple of sadists. Kakuo already has her hands full, and Chome, well, he feels he is not ready to look after anyone yet," explained the sage as he used the Banbutsu Sozo, creation of all things, to create himself a chair to sit on. Matabi turned to the 2 sisters. "Kuroka-chan, why don't you take Sharon-chan down into the village?" Kakuo wanted her to meet some of the orphans. "Hi, Okawa-sama," replied the raven-haired girl as she took her sister's hand and led her away from the shrine. Naruto raised an eyebrow. She hadn't referred to the feline as mother earlier. He pushed that away. As long as she felt safe with Matabi, he was happy. That was all he wanted, for them to be safe. Naruto watched the 2 girls leave. Once they were out of earshot, he turned to face the Nibi no Bakaneko. "How are they really?" asked the sage, earning a sigh from the cat. "Kuroka-chan hasn't been sleeping. She gets maybe 1 or 2 hours a night." I expected as much. I saw the bags. She tells me everything is fine, but I lived with Yugito for close to 27 years. I know when something is wrong. I often find the girl waking up in a cold sweat shivering. She holds in her screams so not to frighten her sister. Naruto gritted his teeth, his fists clenching. No doubt she was having nightmares about her past. Such a traumatic life would leave mental scars on anyone, let alone the physical scars she had. What about Sharon, the kitten? While she didn't go through the same experiences as her sister, she will not fall asleep unless her sister and I are there. She attached herself to her sister. Kuroka was like a lifeline to the poor thing. The kitten was abandoned by her mother. While she doesn't show it, she clearly knows what happened. As such, she formed a kinship with me, no doubt due to the devil fruit she consumed. Her own mother abandoned her, so she clung to affection, and like you heard, she addressed me as her mother, her mother. The feline's ire seemed to grow at the thought of the little girl's real mother, who would dare to abandon such a sweet little kitten. Naruto reached up, stroking Matabi's fur to calm her down. All that matters is she has a home now, both of them. I will do what I can to help them, but they have bonded with you. Both of them see you as their mother figure now, no doubt instincts driven from their devil fruits. I know you will do your best to help them overcome what they have been through, but remember, you don't have to do it alone. Thank you, Naruto-kun, Matabi purred softly as her tails brushed against her friend. Now then, we best see how the girls are doing. Naruto climbed to his feet, Matabi joining him, both heading down towards the village. No words passed between them as both only had thoughts about the well-being of the two sisters. On an unknown part of the Grand Line, a bellowing laugh echoed over the clear blue sea. Gu rah rah rah. The boisterous laugh echoed high into the heavens. The hearty laugh was coming from a large battleship with a blue whale figurehead. This battleship was like no other, its size capable of dwarfing any other ship in existence. Seated in the middle of the ship, hooked up to numerous oxygen tanks and medical equipment, was a man of titanic proportions, easily 3 times the size of a normal human. He had a long face, plowed from age, with many wrinkles around his eyes. His chest was muscular with many scars. He wore a black bandana around his head and adorned himself with a white captain's coat, which hung loosely from his broad shoulders, and bore a Jolly Roger with a large mustache and a manji wan behind the skull. He wore light, loose pants tucked inside his large black boots, and a dark pirate sash around his waist. The man laughing was the renowned pirate Edward Newgate Whitebeard, captain of the Whitebeard Pirates and one of the Yonko. He was known as the strongest man in the world and the man closest to One Piece. One may ask why the most feared pirate in the world would be laughing so hard. The source of Whitebeard's amusement was a brand new wanted poster, one that had just been released with the image of a white-haired, horned stranger who had strange rippling eyes with comma-like markings. In big bold letters at the bottom was Rubiniru no Oni, demon of Elneil. Following this was a bounty like no other. Gu rah rah rah, 1 billion berry, what an upstart! Roared the legendary Whitebeard, grabbing hold of his stomach from how hard he was laughing. The age-old pirate could feel his sides beginning to hurt. Yawn, what's so funny, pops yoy? Standing before the laughing giant was a blonde-haired man with a sleepy expression. He was wearing an open purple jacket and dark gray knee-long pants with black sandals. He had been sleeping peacefully, only to be rudely awoken by the sound of Whitebeard's roaring laughter. Edward gave his son, Marco, a toothy grin as he passed the wanted poster down to him. The blonde grabbed hold of the poster, his glazed eyes looking over its content as he started to read. His eyes shot open wide awake. 1 billion berry yoy! Shouted the 1st Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates using his trademark, yoy. Pops, is this for real yoy? Asked the blonde-haired pirate, staring at the wanted poster in disbelief. This was the highest bounty to have ever been released, surpassing not only Gold D. Rogers but his Pops as well. This was insane. Oi Marco, what's got you and Pops in such an uproar? The commander of the 5th Division Vista, a tall, muscular, broad-chested, tanned man with a curly black mustache and a dark blue top hat, came walking towards the two. Vista was surrounded by other high-ranking members of the Whitebeard Pirates, including Diamond Jozu. Marco turned to his comrades, handing the bounty poster over to them. What? Roared the group of pirates, a couple fainting in shock. Gu rah rah rah! Roared Whitebeard, his laugh causing his ship the Moby to shake. Marco turned to Whitebeard with a serious expression. Pops, This is not a laughing manner. This guy's bounty surpasses even yours, Yoi, shouted Marco, giving his father an irritated glare. His pops was just being way too carefree about this new player. You need to think about this, pops. This Rubeniru no Oni guy seems to be a new powerful player. Hell, we don't even know this guy's name, and from the reports, he dispatched 4 ranked Marines with ease. Then there's this guy's apparent high-speed regeneration, Yoi, said Marco as he pointed up at his pops. Whitebeard waved his son off. Gu rah rah rah. You need to worry less, my boy. I see great things from this new upstart. Gu rah rah rah, roared Whitebeard. His crew burst into shouts and screams as they began to loudly discuss this new rising player. None of them had noticed, however, that Whitebeard had gone surprisingly silent. Edward Newgate, Whitebeard, was staring at a second copy of the wanted poster, his gaze locked onto the stranger's eyes. So the child of prophecy has returned as foretold. Will you bring about an era of peace or destruction? Whitebeard let his thoughts trail off as he released the poster, letting it fly off into the air, where the poster landed atop the ocean's surface. The poster started sinking beneath the sea, the eyes of the Rubeniru no Oni being the last thing to sink beneath the water's depth. Polestar Islands, Logatown. A tall girl of 16 years with shoulder-length black hair was seated at a small cafe in Logatown, a city that encompassed close to the entire island. The young girl had brown eyes with dark, wide pupils and a thin, defined nose. She was wearing navy blue skinny jeans, a long-sleeved buttoned high-collared lavender shirt with black high heels. She had a pair of black shades sitting on the bridge of her nose. The young girl was keeping to herself as she read over a newspaper in her hands. She was using the newspaper to hide her face all the while reading the various articles. The girl was known as the Devil Child, Nico Robin, with a bounty of 79 million berry. She had been traveling the ocean seas since she was 8 years old. 8 years ago her home had been destroyed by the Marines and everyone she had ever loved wiped from the face of the planet. She was the only one to escape, only to live a life of hell. She had been hunted non-stop. The Marines had placed a bounty on her head, labeling her the Devil Child, seeing to it that no one would help her. Robin turned a page, her eyes widening at the article before her. Staring her in the face was the single highest bounty to ever been released, a bounty of 1 billion berry placed upon a man with the moniker Rubeniru no Oni. However, it was not the man's bounty that caused her shock. No, it was his eyes, those demonic lilac rippling eyes with 9 comma-like markings. No, it can't be, can it? She had come across a Pinel gif 3 years ago. The Pinel gif had foretold the coming of a new age where a demon with rippling eyes would return to bring about peace or destruction. The return of the demon would cause justice to be struck down and a king's reign to end. Robin had merely dismissed the cryptic message, but now, she didn't know what to believe. Here before her was a man called a demon with rippling eyes who had brought destruction upon the kingdom of Elneil. This Oni had killed Marines, justice, and killed the king of Elneil, ending his reign, just as the Pinel gif foretold. Robin scrunched the paper up in her hands. She needed to find this so-called demon. Perhaps this demon would know the true history of the world. Robin tossed the newspaper aside and stood up, grabbing a dark purple bag from under the table. She hitched the bag over her shoulder and headed off, vanishing into the crowd. Unknown Island, Grand Line. Loud blaring music echoed over the summer island as roars and cries of laughter filled the air. On the island was a crew of pirates who could be seen partying. The pirates roared, their mugs clashing together, sake spilling out onto the ground. The smell of barbecued meat wafted through the air, as a large boar was roasted over a bonfire by a member of the crew, who was laughing at the actions of his fellow pirates. Across from the partying pirates was a rounded table where 3 individuals were staring intently at one another. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "Royal flush!" roared a red-haired man who was wearing a long black cape, half-buttoned white shirt, a straw hat and loose brown trousers. The other 2 players groaned as they saw the hand of the red-haired pirate. They cried as they pushed their loot of gold coins towards him, making the man laugh even harder. "Oi Shanks, there's something you need to see," a voice echoed over the music, catching the attention of the red-haired pirate known as Shanks. Shanks turned to the voice, which belonged to a tall man with jet black hair wearing a black V-neck shirt and loose gray pants. Approaching was his first mate, and in his right hand was a wanted poster. What is it, Beckman? Can't you see I'm winning? Shanks laughed as he collected his loot, gold coins falling from his hands. Like I said, you need to see this. Ben Beckman, the first mate of the red-haired pirates, handed the wanted poster over to his captain. Shanks obliged his first mate and began to unroll the paper. In the span of a second the pirate's eyes widened and he climbed to his feet. 1 billion berry, shouted the pirate, his shout catching the attention of his crew, who quickly turned off the music. Shanks turned to Beckman, holding the poster out to him. Is this real? Gone was the normal, calm and laid-back pirate. Before them all was a man who could put fear into even the strongest pirates along the red line, the man known as red-haired Shanks. It's real. I made sure to check. It's all over the news and in every paper, boss. It's spreading like wildfire, answered Beckman, watching his captain. Rarely did the man ever take on such a serious disposition. Oi Shanks, what's wrong? Asked a man with wavy blonde hair wearing a dark blue shirt and dark green pants. Shanks turned to his longtime friend, Usopp, and handed the poster over. Usopp stared in confusion at the poster, before he grasped it in his hands and started to read. The fun-loving pirate began to shake, his eyes widening as he read over the details. Are the Marines crazy? Shouted the man, the poster falling from his hands, gliding over in front of the rest of the crew. 1 billion berry, roared the remainder of the red-haired pirates in unison. Oi BBB boss, what are we going to do? This guy's dangerous, what if he decides to come after us? Shouted one of the red-haired pirates, many of his fellow crewmates voicing their agreement with shouts. Shanks began to shiver, his entire body shaking all over. Suddenly he reared back and laughed. Da ha 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 ha, roared the pirate, clutching his stomach, tears flowing from his eyes as he fell over crying from how hard he was laughing. Oi boss, you okay? Asked Beckman as he watched his captain laugh. He didn't know what Shanks found so funny. Shanks slowly climbed into his chair, wiping his tears. A large grin spread across his lips. I say we find this so-called Oni and Dodd and... He paused, causing all his crew to lean in and share a drink. Roared the pirate, punching the air, causing his crew to face fault. His crew scrambled to their feet. Share a drink. Have you lost it, boss? Shanks waved his men off. Sure, he killed some Marines and a king, but... Shanks sat down in his chair, looking towards the poster, his tone having turned into a soft whisper, just loud enough for his crew to hear. Anyone willing to do that to save 2 little girls has my respect. The crew went silent at their captain's words. Their partying stopped as they reflected over what was said. Uzu Shiogakure. Naruto began to sneeze violently. The first sneeze drew no attention, it was quick and short. The second sneeze was louder than the first, and by the third sneeze he had attracted the attention of the new citizens of Uzu Shiogakure. He had thought the third sneeze would be the last of it, then he found himself breathing in, his nose twitching. The Azukage sneezed loudly, sneezing so hard he released a burst of chakra by accident that knocked him over. Naruto groaned as he sat on the ground, rubbing his head. What was that? I can't be coming down with a cold, I'm made of chakra. Someone has got to be talking about me, grumbled Naruto as he dusted his clothing off and began to stand. Numerous giggles caught his attention, causing him to look for the source. Standing in the middle of the street was a small group of children, pointing and laughing at him. Uzu-sama is silly, laughed the children before they ran off, getting a small smile from the sage. At least he was able to amuse the children with his antics. Sensei. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He would know that voice anywhere. Suzuka. He turned around, spotting Suzuka running towards him. His eyes widened as his student attempted to stop herself, but her momentum had caught up with her, causing her to fall forward, crashing into him. Naruto cried out as he fell to the ground again. He groaned as he sat up. Suzuka was straddling his waist, rubbing her forehead. Owie. Suzuka blinked as she then noticed the compromising position she was in. She blushed as she scrambled to her feet, getting off of her sensei, her cheeks rosy red. Naruto slowly climbed to his feet again, dusting his robes off. Are you okay, Suzuka-chan? His affectionate use of her name only made her blush even harder. Yes, sensei, stuttered out the raven-haired girl as she fidgeted under his gaze. So what brings you by? I thought I gave you today off from training. Suzuka blinked. Why did I come running? She began to think, only to blush up a storm remembering what happened. She shook her head, getting rid of the thought before a light bulb went off. Suzuka began looking over her person, before she pulled out 3 rolled-up posters from a pouch on her hip. She held two of the posters out to him. "You might want to see those two first before I show you this one," she instructed, while keeping hold of the third poster. The poster had arrived by a postal bird that often flew over the island. While they were miles away from the nearest island, she had signed up for a postal service to receive the latest newspapers and wanted posters to keep up to date with the world. Naruto raised an eyebrow and grabbed the two posters. He unrolled the posters, his eyes widening. On the posters were the current pictures of Kuroka and Chiron with a bounty beneath. Wanted alive. Kuroka and Chiron combined bounty of 230 million berry. Naruto gritted his teeth as chakra began to leak out of his body. He had been keeping a tight lid on his chakra, but now it was beginning to flow freely. His chakra reserves, which he normally kept sealed, began to flow off as small wisps of blue flames. His chakra continued to grow, causing Uzu no Kuni to shake violently under his power. His eyes began to glow, his incisors beginning to grow in length, his hair flowing wildly behind him in the form of 10 tails. His temper began to grow with every second as he gained a feral look. His chakra began to reach a level that not even he could sense. Naruto was knocked out of his senses when an orange furred tail whacked him upside the head. He turned to find Kurama standing beside him in a miniature form. Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly as he sealed up his godlike reserves. "Thanks, Kurama." The fox yawned in response before he walked off. No words were needed between the two. Having calmed down, Naruto turned towards a slightly shaken Suzuka. The girl had witnessed only part of his power in their spars together, but nothing like he had unleashed. Naruto approached the raven-haired teenager and gave her a comforting hug, bringing her out of her stupor. The girl looked up once she realized what was going on and began to blush up a storm at such close contact, steam pouring from her ears. Suzuka quickly pushed Naruto away, her face as red as a tomato. "Sensei!" shouted the student, flustered by her teacher's actions. She swayed slightly before catching herself. Suzuka turned away from Naruto, taking in deep breaths and exhaling to calm herself down. Once she was calm, she turned around, giving him a stern look, her hands on her hips. Geez. You need to learn to control yourself, sensei," barked Suzuka as she lifted the poster and smacked him lightly on the forehead, puffing her cheeks out. Naruto laughed sheepishly, bowing to his student. Suzuka huffed, but the foxy smile her sensei was giving her only made her want to forgive him. Here." She thrust the third poster in his face, hitting him on the nose. Naruto rubbed his nose as he grabbed the poster and began to unroll it, his eyes widening as he read it. 1 billion berry," shouted Naruto, his student having covered her ears as if expecting his cry. Naruto could only stare at the wanted poster as he read over it. "Rubaniru no Oni, Demon of Elneil, 1 billion berry bounty. Wanted dead or alive for killing the young king of Elneil, over 200 marines, injuring 4 high-ranking marines and the stealing of 2 slaves." His eyes narrowed dangerously as he read that little piece of information. He understood the killing and the injuring of the marines, but the part about stealing slaves seemed unnecessary as they were stating publicly they endorsed slavery. Naruto resisted the urge to rip the paper up. As he read over the abilities listed, enhanced strength capable of throwing a giant and breaking bones with a single punch. Enhanced speed capable of moving at heightened speeds to appear as a blur. The ability to manipulate the elements of wind, earth, water and fire, possibly more. Has the potential to generate explosions with a single punch of various strengths. Strong enough to break through Busashoku Haki. Wonder what that is. Able to create a repulsive force to repel projectiles. High-speed regeneration on such a degree to instantly regenerate limbs. Last known ability to create molten rock. Naruto inhaled, bringing his growing rage under control. His gaze descended upon his student, who froze in fear at his intense stare. "Suzuka, tell me, this bounty on my head, is it significant?" asked the sage, no longer his joking, fun-loving self. Before her stood a shinobi. Suzuka gulped, frozen in her spot. She had rarely ever seen her sensei so serious, and it frightened her. She preferred his carefree, fun-loving attitude, not this. She could tell he was waiting patiently, so she worked up the courage to speak. "Yes, sensei. It is the highest bounty to be released," stuttered out Suzuka, her legs shaking. She shouldn't be afraid, but she was. She didn't know why, but she was afraid of this Naruto before her. Naruto noticed his student's discomfort and his expression softened. a sad smile slipping onto his lips. My apologies Suzuka-chan, I didn't mean to frighten you. Naruto reached. Suzuka flinched, only for his hand to rest gently on top of her head. He gave her head an affectionate pat seeming to calm the girl down. I was careless, I shouldn't have scared you like that. The girl looked up at her sensei noticing his sorrowful gaze, making her shake her head. She grabbed her sensei's wrist bringing his hand down to her cheek. No I'm sorry sensei, I should know better. I should never be afraid of you. She indulged herself in her teacher's warm touch. Naruto smiled at his student, his hand rubbing her right cheek, as she leaned into his touch. He couldn't help but admire how cute she looked. He quickly pushed that thought away. He shouldn't be thinking like that, especially with his student and someone thousands of years younger than him. Naruto retracted his hand. He could see the look of displeasure in his student's eyes, but chose to ignore it. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I need to talk to the Biju. Suzuka nodded, saddened at the loss of her teacher's warmth. She then walked off, leaving her sensei to his thoughts. Naruto left the streets of Uzushiogakure heading towards a shrine, one he had made to honor Otsutsuki Hagoromo the Rikudo no Sennin, sage of 6 paths. The shrine was near the west side of the village close to the wall and surrounded by a stone garden. He made his way across the pathway approaching the small shrine that had the symbol of the Rinnegan and 9 Magatama in a circle around it. Naruto approached the shrine, where he sat down in front of it and began to burn some incense. He began to relax, shutting his eyes as he focused on the deeper plane he shared with the 9 Biju. He tugged on their chakra, alerting them to his summons before he entered. Naruto began to open his eyes and found himself in the mental world shared by the Biju. The first to appear was a sandy brown-colored tanuki, with black cursed seal markings all over its face, body, and tail. This was the Ichibi no Bakitanuki, the one-tailed monster demon Shukaku. The next to appear was none other than the Nibi no Bakaneko, the two-tailed monster cat Matabi herself. Following Matabi was a large turtle, but with a crab-like shell, spikes all over its body, and 3 shrimp-like tails. This was the Sanbi no Kyodai, the 3-tailed giant turtle Isobu. The fourth to appear was a red-furred and green-skinned monkey, with a body build of a gorilla. It has eyes with yellow irides and white pupils, spike-like protrusions along the length of its tails, elongated blunt fangs, and 2 long horns curving upwards on its forehead like a crown. This was the Yonbi no Bino, the 4-tailed monkey king Son Goku. The fifth to show up was a white horse, but with a dolphin's head. It had 2 pointed long horns and 3 shorter horns in front. The ends of its horns, hooves, and tails are tan, with some of the same colored spots before the tan areas of its horns and hooves. It also has red markings under its dark blue-green eyes. This was the Gobi no Horu Ba, the 5-tailed whale horse Kakuo. Following Kakuo was a large white, with a slight light bluish tint, bipedal slug with stubby arms and feet. It has 2 prominent optical tentacles, eyes, and hole-like openings as a mouth. This was the Rokubi no Namakuji, the 6-tailed slug Seiken. After Seiken appeared a blue, armored rhinoceros beetle, with 6 green insect wings, along with a tail, all growing from the end of its abdomen materialized. This was Nanabi no Kabutomushi, the 7-tailed rhinoceros beetle Chome. Following Chome's appearance was an Ushi Oni with 4 long horns on its head. It had a muscular upper body structure, with a hunched back similar to an American bison, arms with spiked protrusions on the elbows, and hands with opposable thumbs like that of a human. Instead of hind legs, its lower half consists of its 8 tails, which resemble the cephalopod arms of an octopus. This was the Hachibi no Kyogyu, the 8-tailed giant ox Gyuki. Last to appear was a kitsune with red-orange fur and red eyes. It possesses the upper body structure of a human, complete with opposable thumbs on its clawed hands. The fox had 9 long-tailed flowing behind it. This was the Kyubi no Yoko, the 9-tailed demon fox Kurama. Kurama looked down towards his old container, the Biju towering over his old friend at his full height. Kurama leaned down, noticing the hidden layer of anger beneath his friend's calm exterior. What is wrong, Naruto? I can sense your anger from here. Is it about the kittens? The fox took note his siblings had focused their attention towards him, so they too had sensed it. Naruto inhaled and materialized a chair to sit in. Once he was seated, he raised a hand and manipulated the mindscape, plucking on his memories. Appearing in front of all the tailed beasts were two large posters featuring the images of Kuroka and Chiron along with their bounties. The Biju read the posters, their anger boiling, but none more so than Matabi. The giant hell cat began to hiss, her fur standing on edge as chakra began to leak from her body. Flames burst to life around her, causing Isobu and Shukaku to back up. The feline was angry. Her heterochromia eyes began to glow as she bore her canines, all the while glaring daggers at the poster. "They wish to tear my kittens away from me," roared the furious feline. Shukaku attempted to calm his sister down, only for the feline to wrap her tails around him and throw the blob of sand through the mindscape, where he crashed into a wall. Oh! The giant tanuki slumped against the ground. He was not getting near Matabi ever again when she was like this. Matabi hissed, her claws beginning to show, as her twin tails swayed about violently. "I'll kill them all before they get a chance to take my kittens," proclaimed the feline, only for Kurama to wrap his 9 tails around her body, causing her to squirm about. "Kurama, release me at once," roared the angry feline. She needed to unleash her wrath down upon those who would dare seek to steal her kittens. She would not let any harm befall them ever again. She would charge hell itself if it meant she could protect her children. Kurama pinned the feline down. "Not until you calm yourself. You are allowing your anger to cloud your judgment," spoke the fox in a calm manner, as he continued to pin his sister down. Matabi fought against Kurama, but even in her angered state she was unable to free herself from the stronger Biju. She slumped against the ground, ceasing her struggles, causing Kurama to release her once her temper had dropped. "Good, being angry would not do your kittens any good. It would only cause more harm," commented the fox. Having once been a walking mass of hatred, he knew what he was talking about. Kuroka and Chiron weren't the only ones to be issued with a bounty. The Biju turned their attention to their fellow chakra being. Naruto manipulated the mental world, allowing his wanted poster to appear before him, where it expanded in size, allowing the Biju to read its contents. "It seems my actions caused the Marines to put a bounty on my head, the largest known bounty to date." Naruto looked up, his expression had turned serious. "These Marines see me as a threat. An unknown, a demon." He began to stand, his chakra bursting open like a dam through the shared mental world, causing cracks to appear along the walls. He looked up, his eyes radiating with power. "If these Marines want to call me a demon, then I will show them just how much of a demon I can be." Naruto's chakra spiked as it seeped from his body in waves that rippled through the mental world. His chakra was so strong it affected the shared plane, causing cracks to form in the room, as small pieces of debris began to fall. "I will take on the hate of this world and purify it. I will end the unjust, rebuild the world anew. I will remove evil and allow the pure to flourish," declared the sage as his hair whipped about violently in the shape of 10 tails. Naruto raised a hand and the number 10 appeared behind him. 10 years. "We will build our forces, and within the next 10 years, we will bring hell upon the corrupt. We shall unleash the force of the shinobi upon the world. We will assassinate the Tenryubito, the Gorosei, the corrupt marines, pirates and nobles. All of them shall be purged from this world." The Biju looked at Naruto in awe. They hadn't realized he had been thinking this all along. But was it even possible to mobilize a strong enough force within 10 years? "That is all. When the time comes I will ask for your help. I will need your aid to bring about an era of peace," declared Naruto as he looked up at his siblings. There was a fire burning in his eyes. He was determined to finish what his ancestors had started. He would bring peace for the millions who deserved it, even if he had to slaughter thousands to do it. He would become a demon, a monster to those who deserved his wrath. The Biju bowed and slowly began to disappear from the mental world one by one. As it came to Kurama's time to leave, Naruto stopped him. "Kurama, please wait." The fox stopped his exit, proceeding to lie down, in order to speak to his old container face to face. "What is it, Naruto? Have you managed to find the memories belonging to Shien yet?" inquired the sage. The fox gave a sorrowful look. "No, I have not." Naruto clenched a fist. Over the last 6,000 years he had been attempting to find the memories belonging to one Shien from Oni no Kuni, Demon Country. In the last 6,000 years, he had viewed hundreds of thousands of memories, all belonging to people he knew and didn't know. There was so many he didn't even know where to start, but with the help of Kurama, They had sorted through the memories, picking those which belonged to the ones he loved most before moving on. In all those years, they had never found the memories belonging to Xian, not one single memory, and it was infuriating. He wanted to know what happened to her. She was one of his precious people. At first he thought she was some stuck-up brat, but he had come to care for her. She was precious to him and he had offered to always protect her. I'm sorry Naruto, the only memories I can find for Oni no Kuni are the ones belonging to its citizens, who fled the moment Obito and his white Zetsu army marched upon the capital. I fear Xian died that day. Naruto bit into his lip, cutting in deep. He clenched his fists, falling to his knees as tears began to fall. He brought his right fist down, punching the floor of the mental world. Why? Why did she have to die? He cried, punching the ground again in order to unleash his frustration. I failed her. I promised I would protect her. I let her die. Naruto's tears dripped to the ground. His hair fell down, framing his face as he cried silently. He had never admitted it, but he had grown fond of Xian. After leaving Oni no Kuni, he had thought about her for many nights. He was not as dense as many thought him to be. Personally, he blamed his upbringing. It had taken him a couple of nights, reflecting on what Xian had said before it clicked. He had felt like such an idiot for saying what he said, but he couldn't deny he liked her, and now, she was gone. Xian was dead for good and he had nothing to remember her by. He failed another one of his precious people. Kurama shrunk his form, standing beside his friend. His gaze fell upon his old friend, as the sage cried away his pain. He had always been with Naruto from the beginning and he understood his feelings for Xian. He had felt them from deep inside his cage. He let his tales drape over, his way of helping comfort his longtime companion. All the while Kurama hoped that his friend would one day move on and find someone to love.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.